Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode number 60. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here for this Monday show. Have a slightly different Wednesday show today because of the game on Thursday between the Steelers and Minnesota Vikings. So it has been a crazy last, 48 hours, Dave, you and I, and the whole, Steelers Depot team trying to recap the Ravens game while simultaneously preparing for the Vikings game. So it's been a whirlwind for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You put the hard work in now. Boy, the Steelers Depot crew has done that. As Hines Ward would say, take your hat off and hand it to them for that. The payoff is that once we get to about through Friday afternoon, we get a couple. we get a kind of a mini buy in there, if you will. But obviously a key game coming up for the Steelers Thursday night. Getting geared up for this one, and we talked about coming out of that game against the Ravens there. Man, you had a game that you had to have. You turn around now and, boy, don't have a letdown now. I suppose if you're going to lose one of these final 5 games, I suppose you would circle this game as the one that I don't want to say okay, but would kind of be sustainable. But, man, they sure could. It would just feel like that game against the Ravens would be kind of all for naught if you go over to Minnesota and get, come back home with an L there. But look forward to getting more into this tape. I know I started on it last night. I think you did as well, too. And we got a great guest on today to help us get ready for the Vikings as well.
We do. That man is Arif Hasan. He's a Vikings beat writer that writes for The Athletic. Also has a podcast called the Norse Code Podcast. I was on that earlier this week, so you guys can check that out for my end of things of previewing this game. We talk with Arif a little bit later in the show to preview and cover the Vikings season and potentially the future of Mike Zimmer. This game apparently means a lot to him and his future with the team. Dave, let's talk about who the Steelers will and will not have available in this game, or at least may or may not have available in this game. The injury report there on Tuesday was pretty cut and dry. 4 players not practicing, the rest of the team practicing in full. So the 4 who did not practice are Joe Hayden with the foot sprain, Robert Spillane with the knee, B.J. Finney, a back injury, and Isaiah Buggs with an ankle. So I don't think you can expect any of those 4 guys to play on Thursday. We'll see what happens on the final and official injury report on Wednesday. But just reading the tea leaves here, I don't think Hayden, Spillane, Finney, nor Buggs will be available.
Yeah, I would believe you're going to be exactly right on the money. I think the big question now when we get into Thursday, I think that's when the moves are going to happen, any elevations along those lines. The big question is B.J. Finney's back injury serious enough to warrant him going to IR? So I think that's one question there. The inactive list is filling up quick if it's not, right? I mean, those are 4 guys there. You would have obviously Haskins inactive as well too. So that's 5, and then obviously potentially a couple more based on some elevations. And I would think that Chaz Green, a good chance that he gets elevated again. I don't know if you mentioned Joe Haig, but he remains the lone player I think on the Steelers reserve COVID list right now. I mean, even if he came off today, he would probably be inactive, you would think there, but it doesn't look like he's going to come off there. So I'd expect Chaz Green to get elevated. Rashard Coward was one of their protected practice squad players announced by the team yesterday as well too. So those could be your 2 elevations right there. At least one of them potentially be a COVID replacement, and the other one be a replacement because they need to dress 8 offensive linemen if they're going to dress the maximum amount of players for that game as well too. So once again, and has been the case, actually this will be the day of the game because it's a Thursday game, but probably going to be an active transaction wire for the Steelers on Thursday afternoon.
Sure, and assuming that Hayden and Finney do not play, then Ahkello Witherspoon should make his second start at left cornerback, I should say, and then John LeGlue probably going to make his first official start. Basically played the entirety of the Ravens game, but did not get to start, obviously, and so he'll probably be the guy at left guard. So this team will have to rely on those guys to play as well as they did against the Ravens.
Absolutely, and I'm sure we'll get into the show a little bit later on, talking about what showed up on the All-22. Let me tell you, it's a lot more enjoyable to watch the tape this week than it was the week before. I mean, there's still some warts in there and all like that, but talking specifically about guys like LeGlue, and he's gotten a lot of praise since being asked to come in early in that game against the Ravens and play at left guard in place of B.J. Finney. I thought as a whole, a lot of people saying, is this the next guy? I mean, the Steelers found a diamond in the rough, or is this the LeGlue to keep everything patched together? Bad puns and all. When it comes to that, I thought for the first three quarters, outside of maybe a nice reach block that he had over to his left, I thought it was just kind of. I mean, it wasn't awful, but I don't think we're going to be putting John LeGlue in the Pro Bowl because of his play in the first three quarters of that game. I did, however, and really Dan Moore Jr. as well too. I thought that side of the offensive line played really, really well in the fourth quarter. I think that's where they made a couple of big time runs and were seemingly able to kind of wear down that side of the football, defensive side of football for the Ravens when it came to the run.
Yeah, a couple of those late fourth quarter runs that Benny Snell, Najee Harris had came off left side, and some of the down blocks that LeGlue and Moore had, some of the combo blocks, more for more especially, I thought were critical in that one. So yeah, it wasn't an amazing performance from LeGlue. It was better than the puns made about him. I'll put it that way. But just the context of coming in your first NFL snaps and not make those key mistakes, no holding calls, no false starts, and just overall being pretty assignment sound. The occasional miscommunication with him, Kendrick Green, on some of the double teams and combo blocks and things like that. But overall, I mean, for a first time out, I thought it was impressive.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, from where that guy started at early, it just goes to show you. It's one of the things that I think you've talked about several times just recently. There, these guys come off the street. The futures contracts guys, and you can't discount them because, and I think even Cameron Hayward and some of these other Matt Canada talked about it yesterday in his talk with the media that you get in. That's why it's important for these guys to show as much versatility as they can during training camp and during the off-season practices, and make sure they show that they know what's going on there. And LeGlue is a perfect example of that. A lot of position flexibility there. And as we talked, I think the other day, if B.J. Finney misses this game, he's probably your backup center, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know who else it would be. It would probably have to be John LeGlue. So speaking of Matt Canada,
is he a better player than Hassenauer? There's not enough tape, but
it's pretty limited. I just prefer the Steelers guards to be bigger. I think it's been very rare when undersized guard or even really undersized lineman in general has worked well in Pittsburgh. So I prefer the guys who are a little bit bigger. LeGlue's not a massive man by any means, but he is bigger than Hassenauer. So I mean, again, the sample size is pretty small, but I just appreciate LeGlue's versatility and that overall readiness.
Right.
And Hassenauer, I guess, is kind of in a similar boat overall with his career arc. But, Matt Canada speaking with the media yesterday and actually had some things to say. A win will apparently kind of put a little pep in his step and talked about John LeGlue and said, great credit to him and like the energy and just, again, the overall readiness from him. But I thought the most interesting part that Matt Canada had to say something we've discussed since literally February, Dave, about the use of pistol. And I thought pistol was an effective weapon in the second half, the fourth quarter specifically against the Ravens. They ran it 8 times, and 7 of those plays, I think, ended up being successful. And Canada said about pistol, quote, the pistol's kind of a combination of both, about talking about, being under center and being in shotgun. It gets you in the gun, but it still gives you kind of a downhill run versus a sideways run. There are certain plays we like better out of it. And so hopefully this is something this team uses more going forward. They've done it a little bit this season, about 3% of the time coming into this Ravens game. Against Baltimore, again, 8 plays. That's about, I think 13, 15% of the snaps. But I really think that could be an effective weapon and tool, and it was to kind of close things out against Baltimore.
Yeah, and going back, I mean, from I think really day one that Canada was hired, I think you had a little something on that. And I think this past February as well too, when it became clear that he was going to be the offensive coordinator this season, you had a nice post on that as well too. We have, it's not like it's foreign. We have seen a little bit of it, but we really have seen an uptick of it lately, specifically against the Ravens. What's the numbers on that right now?
They had run it 8 times. They'd used pistol 8 times. They had run the ball 6 of those 8 plays. 5 of those were successful. They averaged 7.2 yards per carry on those 6 runs. Ben threw the ball twice. One was incomplete on that offsides play that was not called. It was an RPO. And the second, and it was the first pass play, was the 29-yard touchdown to Deonte Johnson. So I would categorize it would be 6 of those 8 plays as being successful, and obviously the touchdown was a massive play.
Well, here's the thing too. On a short week, I mean, you don't want to. You want to try to keep things as simple as possible, right? So, I mean, and I guess in so many words, I mean, we expect a lot of, I would think, carryover from what we saw, especially offensively, in that game against the Ravens. We should see some carryover to that over into Minnesota. So, I don't know about you, but I'm expecting another 8 to 10 at minimum pistol snaps in this game.
I hope so. The only thing that gives me pause is that it wasn't the game plan for them to do that. I mean, they didn't do that until the fourth quarter, and that's really when they had their run success. So they kind of broke through that wall late, but it really came, by some of the pistol. Obviously, they blocked it well, and you have to do that regardless of shotgun under center or pistol. But hopefully, I'd like to think that you see the success of what it brought in that game. It's such a big game, and that you want to use that going forward.
Right, we'll see, but it's something obviously that they seem to utilize well. It still allows Ben Roethlisberger to kind of see the field, if you will, give him that kind of that protection that he likes to have, that he would get kind of in a shotgun, and it's the best of both worlds there, and it'd be interesting to see if indeed they use more of it.
And speaking of that touchdown to Deonte Johnson, the first one, Canada was asked about that play as well, and just about Johnson's game in general, the short area quickness. He's a really tough guy to cover, especially in the red zone, goal-to-go type situations. And I think Canada does a great job of being able to use some of those more nuanced, complicated routes and double moves and pivots and things like that to get Johnson open. And Canada talked about just that play and the fake and just everyone kind of doing their job and leading to Johnson being absolutely wide open.
Yeah, great play design on that. Scissors, on that side of the field switch route concept there, and Baltimore didn't pass it off. I wouldn't say as well or very well, because they didn't pass it off at all. And then Matt Canada talked about Ben buying him by himself a little bit of time. That little pump fake, I think it was maybe Gentry over to that side. I can't remember specifically there, but they don't get any more wide open than that. That's the perfect kind of middle of the field throw for one Ben Roethlisberger pass 12 yards past the line of scrimmage there. And great play call at a great time. The Ravens once again did not handle that well at all. And I mean, not much more to say about it.
Yeah, and I saw the moment that you referenced on the podcast Monday about that fist pump that Ben had, apparently to maybe his family, then also to Canada up in the press box or up in the booth, and that was just a great call and a scheme. I thought Canada really schemed things up well in the second half.
Absolutely, and once again, it felt like more than anything else in the fourth quarter of that game, they kept trying to stick with the run at certain aspects, and it finally started to pay dividends there later on in the game there, and it just really felt in that fourth quarter, I think in general, that the field was kind of slanted in the Steelers' favor. They were moving downhill, and more importantly, they were finishing drives. So, right. For all the good that was there in that fourth quarter, man, they could just clean this thing up a little bit and earlier in the game, because they're still not scoring a lot of points overall. and that's your biggest concern and has been the biggest concern about this team overall, especially when the defense has had their moments where they've been giving up, points in games here. Is, man, you just wish that this offense could show a little bit more explosion, because once again, they had, I think, only three explosive plays in this game, and I know that might sound, I don't know if that sounds like a lot or not. It's not. Overall, and two of those were Deonte Johnson. One was obviously the blown coverage touchdown pass that we just discussed. The other one was a kind of a RPO back shoulder throw over there to the right side, about a 7-8 yard completion that Deonte Johnson, and what he does is making people miss and getting that nice yak, but I just don't think you can continually rely week in, week out. I mean, they've been doing it, so I mean, but they are only 6-5-1 at this point too. You just like to see them clean things up, still be able to connect down the field. Now you had the drop pass, deep pass in the game to Deonte that should have been a touchdown. Perhaps Ben's best throw of the season, if you ask me. That stuff's going to happen every now and again, but on a team that has execution problems, especially a team that struggles to create explosive plays, it's hard to kind of turn your head on those kind of things. They got out of the game, they got the win, they had enough explosive plays, yada yada. But you just have to see, where'd you see the consistency level? I mean, obviously there was I think you circled like 10 plays the week before against the Bengals that, man, you just don't give yourself a chance. How many were there in this game?
Yeah, I don't have the ability to quantify it. I didn't count it the way that I did against the Bengals, but that's probably a good thing because there just probably were less plays that got your attention that said this was a disaster from the get-go. So, I mean, in terms of just disaster plays, there was the failed the quarterback run that Ben had. I think was a sack technically that was on an RPO that Claypool never got his head around. That was a busted play. So that was one, but it was certainly a far cry from the clunky mess that it was against the Bengals.
Right, just got to clean that stuff up now. I mean, they've got some. It seemed like Ben had more time than he's ever had throwing the football the other day. Did it feel that way to you? Did it feel like maybe the protection was maybe the best that he's had, at least in a couple of games?
I thought the O-line did a very good job in pass pro overall. I think some of the overload blitzes, some of the backs might have missed some stuff. Claypool missed a hot read once that you pointed out and missed that RPO later in the game. So I thought some of the pressure that was allowed was from issues not directly related to the offensive line.
Okay.
But overall, to your point, yeah, this offense is averaging 20.3 points per game. And in 2021, that's not good enough to win. Every team they play from here on out is scoring more points per game than Pittsburgh. And obviously, Pittsburgh has a good enough defense to try to keep the score down. But they're going to have to put up points because you just can't win a lot of games and a lot of important games in a stretch run and potential playoff situation where you're scoring, 17, 20 points a game.
Right.
Anything else from Matt Canada that he spoke about that caught your attention, Dave?
I'm just amazed that we had stuff to talk about from Matt Canada. I mean, obviously, he's not going to disclose too terribly much overall, but you can tell he's kind of smelling himself a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm. Must have been a software update in the Canada programming or something that gave him a little more personality in this one. Good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's keep that. I thought it was funny. Hypothetically speaking, if you had to scheme against T.J. Watt, how would you do it? He says, I don't have to do it, and I'm not going to answer that.
Yeah, that's a good answer. It made me laugh
good
a little
answer.
bit. All right, let's flip over to Keith Butler, who spoke as well. I thought kind of the most interesting thing that he said was talking about Ahkello Witherspoon. And obviously he played pretty well and had a big, key third and long breakup midway through that fourth quarter on Mark Andrews in that game. And Butler had said, Witherspoon has all the traits, tools, a big, long, lanky cover corner that's valuable, generally speaking, in the NFL. But what he defined was a lack of urgency previously with Witherspoon. He said, quote, he probably hasn't been urgent enough. He's starting to get that now. You've got to be able to play with a sense of urgency when you're playing corner in this league because guys can run by you. And so I don't know exactly how Butler defines urgency. He wasn't asked about that and followed up on that, but that's the key word there that Butler used.
The urgency was that James Pierre was having some rough games.
Yeah, the urgency to find someone else.
Yeah, that's the urgency came with, man, we need to try something else because James Pierre is out here struggling a little bit. That's the urgency. He wanted to say that, you know what, he wasn't getting a helmet because Danny Smith doesn't want him out there on special teams. He wanted to say that, but he didn't. And let's not kid ourselves. Look, I mean, he had a great play in what ended up looking like an inverted cover 3. How many times do we see Steelers run some inverted cover 3 with Cameron Sutton running 40 yards down the middle of the field to kind of be the middle of the field safety in that situation there? It was that long lankiness and kind of awareness that got Witherspoon to that ball. It was a big play in that game, right? Because I don't know. Andrews might be gone on that one. I don't know, but there is that kind of fear, though. What's going to happen if a running back or a tight end or wide receiver screen? That's the way I'm attacking him moving forward. If I know that he's out there, I want to see that guy. I want to see just how willing he is, where the aggressiveness is on him.
Well, I think he's willing. It's just technically, physically, can he do it? And he struggles in that regard.
Right. You can want to stick your fan in. You can tell yourself all you want that you want to stick your face in the fan. But how do you do when you actually stick your face in the fan? You know,
right.
how does it look? You know?
Yeah. I think there's at least a difference between a guy that doesn't want to do it and a guy that's trying to do it and just struggling.
You're gonna make me break out the Gerard Holloman here, but
poor Gerard Holloman. He's gonna get a royalty check every time we mention this guy's name.
He's not Gerard Holloman.
Yeah.
He has shown the willingness in his previous tape to do so, but these Tigers don't automatically change the stripes. Okay,
sure.
He is who he's going to be. Now, can he work on a technique of it wise? I guess. I mean, I still worry about him, and if I'm an opposing offensive coordinator, I want some wide receiver screens out there. I want bodies out there on him. I want him to spend half the game covering, half the game tackling the catch or setting the edge and all those kind of things. Now, it got him through the game, obviously, with the Ravens. He more than deserves to make another start, in my opinion. But let's not put him in the Ring of Honor just yet.
Sure. No. I think you're right about that. I would test him with Justin Jefferson in this game for sure. If I'm Minnesota, and his tackling's not great, but it's a lot better than where it was coming out of Colorado, because he was an abysmal tackler coming out of college, just like the worst tackler I've seen. And so there has been improvement there, but by NFL standards, it's still below average.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, look, I understand why Keith was smelling himself a little bit coming out of this game as well too, because they needed to do some things differently than they have been doing with more than a couple people struggling. And that play with Witherspoon, that play alone was a big play in that game. And those guys, every guy that got the helmet and got the extra playing time. Montravius Adams, who I know Keith talked a little bit about as well too. I'll let you kind of recap that. But all those guys deserve to be back on the field this week. But they need to play like they did or better moving forward.
Yeah, and they do deserve to be out there. And the bottom line was they did not get beat deep in this game. And the Ravens had weapons, and they have Brown and Andrews and guys capable, Watkins, of winning deep. And so you did not allow the big play. And if you do that, then usually you're going to keep the score down and be competitive, which is what ultimately happened. So speaking of Butler and Adams, I don't know, there were a ton of questions about him. Was there one early? I'm trying to find where it wasn't.
I thought he said something about.
He was asked about, did you like Adams coming out? And then he said that's a question for Carl Dunbar, the D-line coach, which I don't know if he was even on staff in 17. I can't remember if Dunbar was with the team or not then. But, Adams played well. He played It was just, maybe because the bar is just so low, we're just so like Eddie Murphy starved for like a
right.
good decent
That was a good nose tackle. That's the best nose tackle I ever had.
Saltine? That's a Ritz. It was a Ritz on Sunday. But I thought Adams played well, got penetration, good effort, and just really worked hard. And you could tell like he was taking advantage of the opportunity and certainly deserved that chance again to play Thursday.
As I mentioned the other day, even before we got into the All-22, when going back through that TV tape right after that game, man, his get off just jumped right off the tape. Period, and it's evident in the All-22. I think you had an effort play by him that you posted on the Twitter machine. I posted one as well too. Big guys running after the football that never gets old, and he fit right in. Now look, they weren't that. I don't think they were overly that exotic with what they asked him to do. Another couple of days with the organization, maybe they'll be able to do a few other things, but more than anything, what stuck out to me with him was the get off and just the penetration into the backfield. Mm-hmm. And if you get your color helmet in poking through there, a couple times he was going through and was on the ground there, but you get that different color helmet going through one of those gaps, it interrupts maybe what that running back wants to do, makes him think that he's got to go somewhere else, behind the backfield there. So could he be a little bit better with penetration, maybe staying on his feet? Yeah, I think so in some instances there, but man, just from what we have seen so far, now we were obviously hyper-focused because he is the new guy. Right. We were going to pay a lot more attention to number 57 in this game. But, I mean, even going through it with a fine-tooth comb at this point, Alex, I mean, Mike Tomlin was asked the other day, did they maybe found something here with Montravius Adams? He said, I don't know, maybe, and that's where I am right now. So I really am looking forward to now his second game with the Vikings, because I would imagine that the Vikings like to have Ham on the field and right. and run a little bit of heavy in this game, and Madison is kind of a physical kind of in between the tackles runner as is Cook. So I am quite interested to see if Adams can follow this thing up. And look, I mean, the Steelers. It'd be nice to see the Steelers not have to spend an early draft pick on a defensive tackle. You still don't know completely what you may or may not have in a Carlos Davis at this point. I'm not saying that you rush right out after the season is over and re-sign a Montravius Adams, but I mean, having an Adams and a Tyson Alualu in 2022, if both are healthy, I mean, it's not awful.
Yeah, it's going to be good depth, and as you said, maybe you add Carlos Davis into that mix as well. Yeah, I just thought maybe it was a good thing for Adams that he was new, because it was simplified, and nose tackle isn't terribly complicated to begin with, but it was all of just get a field, penetrate, shoot your gap, hold your ground, and try to be disruptive, and you're just not thinking, and you're playing fast and kind of playing to the skill set that he has. He had the biggest play of the game was late third quarter, a toss to the left, and he makes a diving ankle tackle on Devonta Freeman for a 2-yard gain. If he does not make that play, it's on my Twitter timeline if you guys want to see it. Mm-hmm. If he does not make that play, that's going to be easily 10, 15, 20 yards, maybe a touchdown, because Freeman has nothing but green ahead of him. So the ability to flow down the line and make those plays and show effort and show athleticism, all things we've been really yearning for since Alualu broke his ankle.
Yeah, and there's also that play over to the Ravens left side where he shows pursuit in the back. I think it was on a pass maybe, but he cuts back. The back cuts back over that way, and Adams helps clean that over there, clean that up over there as well too. Cameron Hayward gave us another great example to. Never give up on the play, right? I mean, you had kind of an extended play with Lamar Jackson in that game that you posted, rolled out to his right over there. Then Cameron Hayward knows that the inside rush at that point is moot, so he tries to get himself involved somehow in the play, and essentially drops back and tries to find the back, Devontae Freeman in coverage there, and I'm not so sure he didn't get a pinky on that on that football in the air there. But just goes to show you that effort, speaks volumes, and got a good example setter there, obviously in one Cameron Hayward.
Yep, best in football in terms of effort plays and just in general when it comes to Cam Hayward. Keith Butler did briefly talk about Adams, and he said Butler got the old man story here. I used to be a 3-4 inside linebacker when I played, and I always loved to have me a good nose guard because it made me a lot better of a linebacker when I had a good nose guard. Adams came in and did a good job for us. And so you did see Devin Bush play, I think, slightly better in this game. Schobert actually struggled, to be honest, but certainly when you have a good nose tackle or someone that can be competent, as Adams was, I think that's just kind of how you build your run defense, and it starts with that nose tackle.
Yeah, and if there's defensive positions that were lacking the most once again in the Steelers' defensive side of football in this game against the Ravens, it was both their inside linebackers there, and I don't know if it's going to get much better the rest of the way. I did see where the Texans waived Cunningham this morning, and the way his contract is set up, it is very, very affordable for a team to claim him off waivers there. I'm not saying the Steelers are going to do that, but I believe the Steelers had some level of interest in one Cunningham coming out of Vanderbilt there. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying I would seriously maybe. I don't know what his health is. I haven't watched any tape with him with the Texans at all. But man, if you got any doubts right now about one Devin Bush, there's a guy like Cunningham out there that you probably know a little bit about.
Yeah, I wonder if there are some maybe off the field issues. I think there's been some cleaning house there. I think Justin Reed was deactivated for a game because of that. I think Cunningham reportedly has had some problems. Might have missed the COVID test, I want to say. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but
well, obviously, if there's issues like such as that, the Steelers will stay far away from. Yeah. But they did have, I think, some pre-draft dialogue back with him back in the day. Once again, and I'm not one that goes, oh, they should pick up this guy or pick up that guy. Sure. But you do have, depending on how you feel about your situation there at the linebacker position, and due to him evidently not costing much the rest of the year to claim, I'm not so sure that you don't consider it. Once again, the off-field stuff is the off-the-field stuff, and that obviously could be enough to send you a different direction. I just found it curious that position and that pedigree and the cap hit makes him. Somebody's going to claim him. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it looks like David Culley had said this weekend that Cunningham did either missed or was very, very late to a COVID test, and it was benched because of it, and now released today. So I assume that's all related there. So I don't think Pittsburgh will be players, but you're right, probably someone does pick him up. All right, Dave, let's kind of quickly go through this Ravens game, the all-22 aspect of it, trying to go work a little bit faster than usual here. I had a video this morning for Steelers Depot you guys can check out that talks about some of the adjustments and just kind of minor tweaks and things like that to slow down and contain that Ravens run game, which to Pittsburgh's infinite credit, they did a good job of overall. So I thought, again, just when they played some of these big games against the Browns and Ravens teams that are going to run the ball, that's their bread and butter, Pittsburgh has stepped up. It's a matter of doing that every single game, including Thursday against Minnesota. But I thought some of the tweaks, some of the three outside linebacker look, some of the playing Minka in the box more often, some of the over front stuff they did, I outlined in that video. I thought overall was an effective and needed game plan against Baltimore.
And once again, it was evident that they weren't perfect when it came to containing a guy like Lamar Jackson, but who is, right? I mean, that guy at some point is going to get you. And I think really it plays back into kind of maybe what Keith Butler kind of outlined there. He's a dadgum good player, and you're not going to completely shut him down. They didn't let Lamar Jackson cripple him with his legs, and I think that is the biggest takeaway overall. They didn't let really any of those, any of their running game kind kind of cripple them. I think one of a couple plays that really obviously could have changed some things was that deep pass down the right side, the pass interference on Minka. I don't know if kind of the quick snap got him or what. They looked to be, I think, playing some trap cover 2 on that side. Minka had to go a long way on that. Luckily, the pass rush was there that kind of prevented Lamar from immediately, I think, getting that football out. I think he kind of had to step up. It took time for that to kind of develop there. If it didn't take time to develop, that might be a touchdown with Hollywood Brown standing in the end zone there. Instead, it still ends up as a double explosive play because Minka gets a little bit maybe too aggressive there. I don't know. The arm around, I think, is what got him the most. If he kind of doesn't have that arm around, I don't think he gets called on that because he did look back to kind of find the football there. I think looks is what got that called on him more than the actual him interfering, the spirit, I guess, of the penalty there. But just it goes to show you you prevent a couple of big plays from happening against you. We already highlighted the Witherspoon play in this one as well too, and you get 7 sacks on a guy like Lamar Jackson. That speaks volumes as well too. I thought they did a good job of kind of mixing up their blitz. I think Keith Butler kind of terms the blitz different than the rest of us. I think Keith Butler determines the blitz as far as 5 or more, whereas we kind of term it guys that you wouldn't expect to come, right?
And we categorize both, so we have it, in our charting we have, number of rushers and then also, who is blitzing. And if Arthur Millette blitzes and it's a 4-man rush, then I consider that a blitz because Millette's a corner and typically those guys, obviously you don't expect to blitz. But yeah, I just like the overall amount of blitzes in this game. I think you had to contain Lamar, you have to blitz him because if you're just trying to rush forward and play a spy, I think in some ways that's tougher to do because I know everyone says you got to spy Lamar. Listen, if Lamar's one-on-one with a linebacker, he's going to win those battles a lot, especially if it's Devin Bush who's had his struggles this season. So I think spying is actually a bad strategy to try to contain those super elusive guys like Lamar Jackson. You have to blitz him to kind of contain and constrict the pocket, and I thought Pittsburgh did that effectively in this game.
I mean, look, you only gave up, I think, around 107 net yards rushing in this one overall, and Jackson had 55 of those, and not many of those were design runs anyway. In fact, how many of those were designed by him?
Yeah, not many. It was 3.4 yards per carry for Baltimore on designed runs, not scrambles. And so I don't know what the success rate was on that play. I apologize. But overall, a good job there on containing design runs.
Right. And that was obviously the big thing eating the Steelers alive going into this game. And you have to go into this thinking that you got to stop the run and then you got to contain Lamar Jackson. I think overall they did that. And once again, you make a couple plays in coverage like they did. That's why you're able to keep the score down. And, say whatever you will about that final 2-point play. I mean, it was the biggest play in the game, period at that point. But if TJ Watt does not play in that game, the Steelers do not win that game, correct?
Correct. I mean, 3.5 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, the pressure on the 2-point conversion, the pressure on the Minka pick. I mean, those are game-defining plays, points coming off the board because of one TJ Watt, who, by the way, was not breaking news, but named AFC Defensive Player of the Week for those efforts.
I mean, and I thought Ben Roethlisberger termed it great that, there are a lot of great defensive players around the NFL. How many defensive players in the NFL, though, change games week in, week out, or have the ability to be the reason why you win a game? Period.
Yeah, I would even go further and say not have the ability, but literally do it.
Right.
And Watt seems to do it so often, and that's just super rare to see. And I think Ben basically kind of compared him to Troy in terms of that just high-level, elite, consistent impact.
I mean, obviously we're a little biased here, but I mean that guy has the ability, and he did it in that game against the Ravens. If he doesn't react kind of the way that he does on that 2-point conversion, and because of who he is, maybe had some level of shatness to the throw of one Lamar Jackson.
Is that a word? Webster's?
Shatness.
Shat.
He had a degree of shatness to that throw.
Language.
Well, you give me a chance, I can come up with some. I can create some stats for you. I think.
Oh, you want a Shatness stat?
I want a Shatness stat, and I'm a firm believer that wide receivers should have interceptions too. Mm-hmm. But back to it. I mean, the way you go back and watch that play, and Lamar, I think, was kind of asked about it after the game as well too, and he alters that throw just enough that's what kind of forced the incompletion, if you will. Now, should Mark Andrews probably still have caught that pass? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda, but it doesn't start without T.J. Watt kind of reacting to that play the way he did, and I don't think Derek Tushka does that, or Taco Charlton does that.
Yeah, I'm with you, and you have to remember, I know we all do, is that it's very likely T.J. Watt's playing at about 75-80% right now with the groin and the knee and the hip, and then of course didn't practice all week because of COVID. Like, this is not 100% T.J. Watt, and he's still dominating the game in a way that very few players do, and I think it's just an extra layer of impressiveness of what he's done this season.
Yeah, just and it just goes back into, man, if this guy stays healthy the rest of these games here, I mean, can he get to 22.5 sacks? I think so. Should he be Defensive Player of the Year? I think so. Can you make an argument for him being MVP? I mean, that's out there, but the Steelers make the playoffs, it's going to be because T.J. Watt had a hand in it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a case. He won't win it, obviously, because he doesn't throw the ball, and so only quarterbacks, maybe Jonathan Taylor gets to have MVP. But he better be Defensive Player of the Year, at least based on how the season's going. As long as he gets 20+ sacks, and yeah, he could. I mean, if someone's going to break the single season record of Strahan, it's going to be one T.J. Watt.
Boy, how fitting too. 20 years after 20 years after Strahan did it, right? What, Strahan 2001?
Was it? I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I wonder. Do you think Lamar will take the dive the way that Favre did? I don't think it's going to be as easy for
I don't think. I don't like to see that anyway. I'm not a fan. I would hope that it doesn't go down like that. And the thing is, Watt can get you 3.5 sacks in a game. So it's just I think it's just now a matter of him staying healthy. If he stays healthy for these final 5 games, I mean, you got to like his chances, right?
Yeah, I think he can easily do it. It's 7 sacks in 5 games. And we talked about on Monday's podcast, every 5-game subset you look at this year, he's had at least 7 sacks. So the history tells you he's more than capable of doing it.
He's a monster.
Right.
Look, Highsmith played pretty decent in that game against the Ravens. I think that needs to be talked about. Had a nice bull rush against Alejandro Villanueva over on that side, and particularly, I think that was the play. That was the play that Witherspoon made down the field there. So maybe Highsmith having to kind of maybe rush that throw a little bit played a little part in that as well too.
Yeah, maybe. His power's definitely improved this year, both as a run defender and a pass rusher, converting speed to power. His bull rush has been more effective overall. The spin is still his probably best and go-to move. But, I thought he played better in the second half. He just, he does well getting off of blocks of fullbacks and tight ends. I just want to see him be able to keep contained a little bit more consistently. Just keep that edge set a little bit better. Sometimes he gets a little aggressive there, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I just want to see him set a slightly more consistent edge in overall run defense.
And overall kind of takeaways from offense once again. For 3 quarters, I mean, not a lot to really the unfortunate stuff with Claypool, I think twice in the game is kind of troublesome coming out. Deonte Johnson, just a remarkable game once again. That guy's doing everything that he can. The offensive line, once they got into the fourth quarter, seemed to be moving bodies a lot better and wearing down that defensive line. Overall, we talked about the use of the pistol kind of helping out there. Anything else kind of stick out offensively to you on the tape?
Yeah, I mean, it was just that run into a brick wall until it became less of a brick wall. I mean, Brandon Williams, their nose tackle, their plugger, had 11 tackles in this game. That's a career high for him. I mean, nose tackles like that, not supposed to have 11 tackles. That kind of tells you about how much Pittsburgh was trying to run the football. I thought in pass pro, Dan Moore played a whale of a game. I'm going to break down his snaps hopefully later today. I just thought consistently maybe his best play or best game, I should say, in pass pro overall. And I think he made a good point about Kendrick Green being on the ground. There was one play he started on the ground. He didn't finish on the ground. He started on one knee, which is not a good place to be for an offensive lineman. And there's some up and down. It was a very typical Kendrick Green kind of game.
Yeah, starting to see. I don't have we will come up with an on the ground counter after the season, I'm sure, as we go back through some of this. But it kind of felt like he was doing a better job the last few games of not being on the ground, but boy, I sure did notice him on the ground. And one in particular there was he's going to get somebody hurt. That's one of my number one. Other than the play going sideways there was the one I think where Brandon Williams just threw him to the side and into the back of Chukwuma Okorafor's legs. So that really disturbs you a little bit because somebody's going to get hurt when you're on the ground like that. Besides, you can't make a block when you're on the ground.
Yeah, you think about the rookie wall, and that's a subject of my terrible take today for Steelers Depot about just all those rookies because, I mean, every single rookie that's on this team is contributing meaningful snaps for the team, right? And every single draft pick, I should say. The only one that's not is Roche, who's contributing over with the Giants. And so those guys really have to kind of run through the tape, and Pittsburgh's asked more out of this rookie class than probably any rookie class ever in terms of the rookie season. And those guys have to really kind of strain and finish because there is no scaling back of snaps or reducing workload and stuff like that. These guys are key contributors, especially the top 4 picks, and they have to play like that the rest of the way.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to bring up Creed Humphrey in the season he's having. I'm not going to bring that up in this podcast.
I'll bring it up. He's having a great season over there.
Alex did it.
He was my guy. I said I would have taken him at 24. Now, again, I'm not mad about Harris or Freiermuth, but I'm just saying Humphrey I thought was clearly the best center, and you do kind of wonder, if they'd taken him, how things would look.
Right. I'm not gonna bring up Creed Humphrey though. Okay.
All right. Just like Fight Club. Number 1 rule, don't talk about it. All right, Dave, let's take a break here. And as mentioned at the top of the show, we'll have a Vikings beat writer. That man is Arif Hasan, writer for The Athletic, also hosts the Norse Code podcast. You can be sure to follow him, and please follow him and let him know you heard him on the Terrible Podcast at Arif Hasan NFL. Dave, let's take a break and come back with Arif.
All right.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And as we mentioned earlier in the show, have a Vikings beat writer on for this Thursday night game to preview the Minnesota Vikings game and their season in general. That man is Arif Hasan, who writes for The Athletic. Vikings beat writer, also has a podcast, Norse Code Podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Arif Hasan NFL. Thanks for being on, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so I just want to kind of start this season, and obviously we'll kind of go through some of the key players here. And Dave and I had a discussion on the podcast about Ben Roethlisberger the other day, and the question was, if you couldn't show someone the film of Ben, how would you describe him in a couple of words? How would you apply that to Kirk Cousins? How would you describe Kirk Cousins in a couple of words or phrases about how he's done this season?
He's a student that aces the test unless it's a timed test. How does that sound?
I like that.
Yeah, no, he's a very paint by numbers quarterback. So he'll take what the defense gives him, even if it's Justin Jefferson's matched up against J-Ron Curse, whatever. That the cover 2 is telling him to throw into the honey hole, so he'll do that, even though it's just D.D. Westbrook or something like that. So he paints by numbers. He lets the defense dictate what he does, which is pretty good for 95% of the game. But when you get into situations where you need to have a little bit more situational awareness, that's where he really struggles. Sometimes on 3rd and long, definitely in the final 2 minutes. Teams that do a really good job disguising coverages get him, although he's actually quite good at like pre-snap reads and stuff like that. So it is tough to get him that way, but if you get him that way, he's done for.
I know Mike Zimmer has basically openly discussed the need and the desire for Kirk Cousins to be more aggressive, even saying like more interceptions wouldn't always be a bad thing. But you look at some of his overall numbers, 25 touchdowns, only 3 picks, his yards per attempt is just outside the top 10 in the NFL. Is that a fair critique to say that the Cousins need to be a more aggressive risk, anti-risk averse kind of guy, or is there something on the tape, the stats aren't showing because the numbers look really good?
Yeah, the numbers look fantastic. I think what Zimmer's really referring to is, taking some of the deep shots when you've got players one-on-one, because both Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson are really fantastic contested catch receivers. I think Jefferson's contested catch numbers last year were just fine. They weren't fantastic, but in college they were amazing. I think kind of on film you kind of see what qualities he has that make him such a good contested catch receiver. And then Adam Thielen has been kind of at the top of the PFF numbers for contested catches. I think top 10 basically every year that he's been in the league as a starter. So, kind of trusting them to be able to win some of those. And then that is kind of the frustration in, say the final 2 minutes, where a lot of quarterbacks, knowing that, they've got 75 yards to march, they've only got a minute to do it, they might only have one timeout. You can't take 5-8 yard dump offs, even if that's what the defense is giving you. You have to, take those deep shots, because an interception in the final 2 minutes of the game is just as bad as an incompletion on fourth down, right? And so you need to take that risk, because the risk is technically it's quite a bit less. And then also if you're taking deep shots, those interceptions are occurring much further downfield. And so, it's not that bad. So yeah, the touchdown interception ratio is sublime. But it's not occurring the way that, some of the years that Rodgers had really good touchdown interception ratios. He's making explosive plays. This year, for whatever reason, Cousins isn't. Last year, he was an explosive playmaker. I think he was top 10 in deep ball passing rate. The year before, he was top 10 in deep ball passing rate. He'll throw deep, but it really has to be defined for him. So I think that's what Zimmer's saying is like, trust your instincts a little bit more, because he's very much not an instinctive quarterback.
Arif, when you look at this Vikings team, 5-7 coming into this game, obviously the last play loss there to the Lions last week. There, you look at these Vikings from an analytical standpoint, advanced analytics, and you look at the adjusted net yards per passing attempt number for the team. I think is second in the NFL. The defensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat could be better, but it's still manageable. It's right there along the lines, I think, where the Steelers number is there. Everything kind of points to, and you look at Cousins' numbers specifically, and not sacked all that terribly much, and not turning the football over too terribly much. Where's the overall disconnect on this team? Because you look at them analytically and you say this is probably a 7-5 team, or maybe even an 8-4 team, but then you turn around, they're 5-7 in this game on Thursday night. For lack of a better words, backs against the wall kind of game, if you will.
Yeah, part of it is kind of like how these statistics are accrued, which has always been kind of the knock on Cousins. And I think that one way to think about it is if you eliminated any score that occurred in the final 2 minutes of each half, right? Neither team scores in the final 2 minutes of the half. The Vikings would be 9-2-1. They'd have the second best record in the NFL. The Patriots in that scenario, I think, are 11-1-1, and they'd be number 1. The Vikings would be number 2. And then I think the next team would have 8 wins. So it's a pretty good team for most of the game. But then it turns out, those 4 minutes, despite, only being 4 of 60, matter quite a bit.
Right.
And the Vikings have been historically bad, especially on defense, in those situations. So the Vikings have allowed 6 points per game in the final 2 minutes of the first half alone, which is the most in recorded NFL history, which only goes back to 2000 for this statistic. But to get a sense of how bad it is, the second worst team of the 2018 Bengals, so the Vikings allow 6.0 per game, the Bengals allow 4.75. That's an enormous distance, right? Mm-hmm. The distance between 1 and 2 is the same as the distance between 2 and 33, and the distance between 33 and 311, out of the 702 teams that statistic encompasses. Mm. So they are historically egregiously bad in the final 2 minutes. And so that's part of it, is that if you hold a team the Vikings have had a 6-point lead in every single game that they've played. They're the only team to do that this year. If you give that up at the end of the game or at the end of the half, then you no longer have that advantage. And now you're kind of playing, left-handed essentially. That you don't get to play with the lead. The Vikings like to run the ball. So yeah, statistically, in the middle of games, they've done a pretty good job. You even think like, hey, maybe they don't finish, but the red zone numbers are a little bit better than you'd think, given the disconnect between what you'd expect them to be able to do. But it is just like a lot of situational football. That's really it. And then there's a lot of penalties that don't get counted in the yardage. The Vikings have had a ton of penalties this year.
When you look at the Thursday game now, and obviously there's I think there's a big article in the Ringer this morning on the Vikings, and you go back to the Steelers game last week, backs against the wall, coming off of a disgusting loss against the Bengals. I mean, if the Steelers lose that game to the Ravens this past Sunday, I mean, the rest of the season, the outlook's not all that great, and it kind of feels like the Vikings, even though this is an interconference kind of game here, it feels like this is a defining game for them on Thursday night, just for the future of the franchise. I mean, Zimmer's been around several years. I know the fan base hollering probably for his head about now. Spielman probably the same way. Cousins, I think, has got just one more year, I think, left on his current contract. How is this game indeed bigger for the Vikings than it is the Steelers this week? And just talk about the overall feel, the overall kind of culture as we get into this Thursday night game.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a pretty real possibility that if the Vikings don't win this game, Mike Zimmer's fired. So yeah, I think it's probably bigger for the Vikings than it is for the Steelers in that respect. It's tough because the Vikings are in the hunt, as it were. I mean, there's a graphic that showed during the Lions game after the Lions game when they lost. Of all the 5 and 7 teams in the NFC that are in the hunt for the 7th seed, and the Vikings are at the top of it. They would be the 8th seed, I think, right now, which I think is a pretty good indictment of a 14-team playoff. I think that's bad, but also like if the Vikings are a playoff team, and you mentioned, hey, they're close in all these games. They've got a positive point differential. Statistically, they seem like they should be, a 7 or even 8 win team, and I get you. I feel a lot of that. They've taken it to the Packers. They were within 1 point of the Cardinals. They were within 3 points of the Ravens. Like they do a good job against good teams. But when you're putting yourself in a position to be in close games all the time, and then your defense is not great in 2-minute scenarios, and then your offense is headed by Kirk Cousins, who's famously bad at that, then it kind of just gets kind of washed away. And so. Yeah, the Vikings are in this weird. They have this weird property where they're both a good team and a bad team, but that doesn't mean that they're a middle of the road team. They are neither, right? They're both in neither, but they're not the middle. And so it's just a very difficult team to kind of discuss and break down because there's some moments where they are just brilliant. Like their game against the Chargers was really fantastic. But then there are just some moments like the one they just had against the Lions where you're like, I don't even know how they can feel comfortable saying that this is one of the better teams that they think they have.
Arif, what's the injury report going to shake out for him? It looks like a good chance with Adam Thielen in that high ankle that he's going to miss a game. I'm guessing Dalvin Cook's going to end up sitting this one out, and I would guess that their rookie left tackle Christian Darrisaw will miss this game as well too. Are those the three?
I would have expected Dalvin Cook to miss out, but he did participate, limited participation on Tuesday, which was a big surprise. He dislocated his shoulder, a week ago, and they expected him to miss the next 2 games, which include, of course, the Steelers game. I imagine he'll end up being a game time decision, but yeah, they won't have Adam Thielen, high ankle sprain. They won't have Christian Darrisaw. I don't know what they're going to do along the offensive line. I think the way that they handled not having Christian Darrisaw on Sunday was pretty poor. So we'll kind of see if they take a different approach there. But they will be getting players back. I mean, they didn't have Eric Kendricks last week. They'll have him this week. They didn't have Patrick Peterson last week. They'll have him this week. I keep saying week, even though it was like 2 days ago. But you're dealing with the same kind of weird constraints on time. But yeah, and they might actually have Anthony Barr back as well, who's missed a couple of games. I think for at the beginning of the year. I think these last 2 weeks. And so they're getting about as many players back as they are losing. I think that getting Peterson, Kendricks, and Barr back might slightly outweigh losing Cook and Darrisaw. But, I mean, you're trading like really high-impact players, so it is difficult to try and figure out how that all washes out.
You had mentioned that Mike Zimmer might get fired after this game if the Vikings don't win. Is that based off of reports? Is that based off the inference just on where the Vikings are at if they drop to 5-8? And is there any way he can save his job at any point this year, or is it a matter of will he get fired Friday or on Black Monday?
Yeah, it's more based on inference. There's not really a report. It's been kind of the general feeling, I think, which is really hard to quantify. But, the same way that if you'll remember Lovie Smith getting fired after a 10-win season with the Bears, if someone else had lost a tiebreaker, the Bears would be in the playoffs, and everyone knew that Lovie Smith was getting fired. And I don't think there was a single report from a reporter saying that Lovie Smith would be fired if they didn't make the playoffs, but everyone kind of knew it. And I think that kind of general feeling is there. I don't know that he would get fired on Friday, although, from a timing perspective, that would probably work out because the interim head coach now has 10 days to prep the team as opposed to, only having a 7-day week or a 2-day week, after the Lions game. Or if it just kind of sets in stone the fact that he would be fired near the end of the season. Now, there was a rule change this year that you can interview coaches in the last 2 weeks of the regular season. It's the first time they've been able to do that. So there is actually an actual advantage to firing someone early this year when before, it was either an accountability move or trying to see what you have in an interim most of the time I don't really get it. But, there's a bigger reason now to kind of do it, which is that you don't want to start interviewing assistants when you still got, that coach still coaching. So sure. There is a reason to do it, but the Wilfs very much want to be the Rooneys. They very much love the idea that, what was it, 54 years they've had like 3 coaches or something crazy like that. Right. Yep. They love the idea of stability. Now, of course, Mike Tomlin has earned that by going to and winning Super Bowls. So it's a little bit different when the coaches are good, right? Like you should probably move on from bad coaches, but they really love the idea of having stability. And so I don't think that they want to send a message that they're an unstable franchise. And of course, if you're searching for a coach, I mean, the Browns have famously had a lot of difficulty finding the top coaches. I think Stefanski was the first time in a very long time that they got their top coaching candidate when it wasn't an internal candidate like Freddie Kitchens, right? Mm-hmm. And part of that is because the Browns continuously fire coaches after 2 or even just 1 year. Part of that's, it's the Browns. Part of that is, the players that they have and the picks that they have and stuff like that. But part of it is, the perceived stability of the franchise. And the Vikings would probably have a strong, perception of that, given, how long Mike Zimmer's been tenured and they've stuck through him through some pretty understandably tough moments. But, it would kind of disrupt that a little bit if you fired him in the middle of the season. So they're probably weighing a lot of these things out. But I think if they lose to the Steelers, it either locks it in or makes it a Friday firing.
Is Spillman at risk too, or no?
Yeah, I think they're kind of connected at the hip. They the last 3 contract extensions for both of them have been for the exact same number of years, which I think sends a message that they are kind of locked at the hip. I think that there is a greater chance that if only one of them is fired, that it's Zimmer and that Spielman stays. But I do think that this is probably kind of a clean the house scenario if the Vikings do move on.
Yeah. The last time Pittsburgh fired a head coach was 1968. So it's been a long time for Steeler fans to think about that kind of stuff. I want to ask you about the offensive line. I know you mentioned Christian Darrisaw is not going to play in this game. He's had a lot of injuries this season, but just overall, what's been your evaluation of him when he's been at least available? I don't know about healthy, but available to them, taking 1 pick ahead of Pittsburgh. And then Ezra Cleveland. I loved him coming out of Boise State as a left tackle. I know they kicked him to left guard. I wasn't sure if that move was going to be great for him. How has he done, kicking inside?
Yeah, so with Darrisaw, I want to say impressed. He's not playing like Rashawn Slater or Tristan Wirfs or anything like that, so I want to get that out of the way. But he is playing significantly better than anyone else they've thrown out there in a long time. That includes players like, Matt Khalil and Rashad Hill, and it's not, an extraordinary roster of players to compare him against. Yeah, it's a lower bar. But I would say, compared to like an average left tackle, he's about there. He's making rookie mistakes, but he's demonstrating a lot of power. I know one of the issues that I had with him, and one of the issues that was on a scouting report for a lot of teams, was his finishing. He's been a very good finisher. He's one of those players that you're kind of surprised he has both power and athleticism. It was very clear that he was dealing with injuries in his final year at Virginia Tech, because he's moving a lot smoother. He's playing with a lot more grit and toughness, and he's playing a lot more sound football now. But he is making mistakes every so often. He'll misjudge depth on a kick step and stuff like that. So he's on a really, I think, high level track, and so the Vikings, kind of the arrow is up for him. But the issue, of course, is the injury history, right? Because he missed the beginning of the season with injury, or rather recovery from surgery for the injury that he suffered at Virginia Tech. Now he's got another injury. So we'll see. But, that's worked out for him. Ezra Cleveland, long story short, he's playing fairly well at left guard. But I feel like they've kind of yanked him around and have really hurt his development a lot. What's best for the team and what's best for the player aren't always the same thing. They initially started him out at right guard because they had Riley Reiff at left tackle, and he just doesn't play right guard very well. I think his PFF grade is fine, but just watching it, I don't think he plays right guard very well. And when they moved him to left guard, it looked a lot better. And I think he's just one of those guys that either there's kind of a movement thing, right, where some guys can move to the left easier than they move to the right, or he's just so used to playing on the left, that left-sided movement that comes so naturally to him. That footwork is just, he doesn't have to think about it. He's not deliberate about it. And so whatever it is, it's working for him. He is also kind of, if you treated him like a rookie this year, it would kind of make a lot of sense. But he's put together some really, really good games, and he's had some clunkers. But for the most part, I'd say he is playing like an average guard. I'd say Darrisaw's playing a little bit above average for a left tackle. I'd say Cleveland on the whole is playing like an average left guard, which is a huge upgrade for the Vikings. I mean, they've had a famously bad interior for a while. But, Cleveland is figuring out, it looks like.
When you look at the Vikings offensively, and specifically assuming Adam Thielen does not play on Thursday night there, I mean, Justin Jefferson, I remember breaking down his tape during the pre-draft process. What an incredible player. He's not too far away now from becoming probably one of the top 5 paid wide receivers, I believe, in the NFL. That being said, the Steelers like to sometimes, depending on the opponent, try to take away the top threat. We've seen them do it a couple times already this season. I would suspect that they've got a pretty good idea that Thielen's not going to play at this point. So I would expect a lot of bracketing when it comes to Justin Jefferson there. What will be the Vikings' kind of response to that? Even though we've seen teams try to specifically, at least on tape, spend a lot of time on Justin Jefferson, it really hasn't slowed him down too terribly much. The kid still is able to get open. Is this the kind of thing where Cousins will just try to force the ball maybe at certain times to Justin Jefferson? What's the counterbalance to the Steelers trying to specifically take away a guy like Jefferson?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Cousins is a paint-by-numbers quarterback. If Jefferson doesn't look open, he's probably not throwing to Jefferson, which is one of the more frustrating things about Cousins, because he's a guy that I think a lot of people say he kind of relies on the talent level of the players around him, and that's kind of true. But also, he's not using it all the time, and so if he's got like a really good matchup, you would expect that Jefferson would get the ball, and sometimes Cousins will throw it. And he loves throwing to Jefferson when it's one-on-one and there's no safety up top. So if it is, kind of a cover one scenario and you've got Jefferson and that play calls for an option deep or is just a deep route, he'll throw it. But, I don't know that unless they specifically game plan for it, and they might very well do it, I don't know that we'll see kind of a 15-target game from Jefferson like you often see when wide receivers are asked to kind of just carry a team after a bunch of injuries occur around them. With an injured Dalvin Cook who may or may not play, without Adam Thielen, you kind of expect, hey, maybe they'll try to find some way to get it to Jefferson. But I think Cousins is going to see opportunities for KJ Osborne, maybe even D.D. Westbrook, by the way that the Steelers rule coverage, and he might just say, hey, I trust KJ Osborne. I know what he can do. He was getting some 80-yard games early in the season. He's a good player, so I'll throw it to him. So I think we'll see a little bit of that. I think we'll see probably a lot of checkdowns to players like C.J. Ham, Tyler Conklin, and so on. So I don't know. My instinct is to say that Jefferson will still get a fair share of targets, maybe like 8 or 10. But I don't know that we'll see like this crazy target share without Adam Thielen there to kind of keep defenses honest.
When you look at Alexander Mattison, who's probably, regardless of what happens with Cook, is probably going to see quite a bit of playing time in this game. He kind of reminds me, and has, and look, he's no stranger. He's had to log some carries in the past, some playing time there. Does he kind of remind you of I don't know, poor man's Marshawn Lynch, I guess, if you will? Kind of that running style of his has got a little bit of wiggle, a small bit of wiggle to him, but has that kind of power to him. What has been your overall impression about Mattison, and does that bring in the fungibility talk?
Yeah, Mattison is a very interesting back to break down. I haven't come up with a comp for him that I feel super comfortable with, because he's got
that bow leg. He kind of got that bow-legged running style, though, doesn't he? A little bit.
Yeah. The running style reminds me of both Kareem Hunt and Marshawn Lynch. That in terms of the way that he takes on contact, in terms of the way that he's got kind of these weird wide moves, which I think those two kind of have. His balance isn't anything like Lynch's, but like whose is. Right. But his vision isn't there. And kind of one of the things that makes Lynch a really interesting back is that, he's a powerful back and he looks like a power back, but he does have a lot of speed. And if you I think his combine numbers, it's kind of surprising how much speed he has. But Mattison is not a super fast back. Like he ran like a 4.6 at the combine. He's faster than that. But he's 4.68. Yeah, but he's faster than that. But he is athletic in almost every other respect. I mean, he regularly attempts to and often succeeds in hurdling opponents. He's got pretty good one-cut effectiveness and acceleration. He's got good power. He's not super great at reading plays, and there are not a lot of very successful backs that have long speed limitations that like to bounce it outside when they don't need to. And that's why it's difficult for me to find a comp for him, because if he doesn't kind of see it right away up the middle, he'll bounce it outside. And you typically think that that's a quality that you see in kind of these 4-3 backs that have got track speed and stuff like that, like Dre Archer, right? Where he's not reading the play correctly, or it's just not there right away, so he's just going to do what worked for him in college, and he'll just bounce it outside and try to beat someone to the edge and run. And that's usually a fastback kind of thing, but Mattison does it. He's done it a little bit more this year than last year. That said, he takes contact on really well. He's got a really weird athletic profile, which makes it sometimes difficult for opponents to break him down. He does do a pretty good job when he does read plays pretty well of fitting in. It's kind of the big man quickness sort of stuff where, if you see a small hole in a seam, you think there's no way he can fit through it, and then he just kind of gets the footwork to work for him. He's got a pretty explosive jump cut that the Vikings have asked him to use a little bit less because it cuts his momentum down. But when he does use it, it's kind of surprising in how effective it is. And it does bring up the fungibility question, but he's just not a big play guy like Dalvin Cook is when he's healthy. And Dalvin Cook when he's healthy is a phrase I think a lot of Vikings fans and analysts have used. But that guy, who I think only ran a 4.5, whatever. I mean, he gets 40-yard touchdowns all the time. That guy is so good at finishing, so good at generating home runs. Madison's not a home run guy. And so that's kind of where the fungibility conversation kind of runs into something, where Dalvin Cook is generally pretty good at reading plays. I think in the middle of the season so far this year, he's made some mistakes in that regard, and I think it's a question of if you trust his ankle. But I don't know that they are as fungible as the numbers seem to indicate. I think that the Vikings just happen to have blocked a little bit better in some of the games that Mattison has had, some of his highlight performances.
Where do you come in?
He's a good back. I'm just emphasizing a lot of the weaknesses.
Where do you come in on running back fungibility in the NFL?
I mean, I tend to think that running backs don't matter, but the areas where they do matter are in pass protection, where Mattison is a better blocker, but worse at identifying who he needs to block. And I think as a receiver, it's kind of overrated how difficult they are. But so as a pass protector and as an explosive play creator, right? And so part of the reason that Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry were, like last year, two backs that quote-unquote mattered, and this year seem to very much matter for the Tennessee Titans at least, is because they'll turn 10-yard plays into 40-yard plays. And so from a success rate standpoint, it is really difficult to isolate what an individual running back can do. But from an explosive playmaking standpoint, that is something that kind of differentiates some running backs. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of A.J. Dillon, right? I think Aaron Jones is just a much better back for the Packers, even though A.J. Dillon is probably better at a lot of like running back skills, right? And he's got a lot of power, and he breaks tackles really well. I just think that kind of explosive playmaking capability is one of the two areas where these backs can really separate themselves and make themselves matter. But I think for 95% of backs, it's blocking, right? I think that Pollard is a more useful and better back than Zeke, even though Zeke has better kind of skills and is a better pass protector. I think a lot of it is blocking. And then after that, the areas where they do differentiate themselves is in this big play capability area.
Flipping over to the Vikings defense, the Vikings are second in the league in sacks with 36, just one behind Pittsburgh, but they're without Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin. Who is going to be Minnesota's top pass rush threats in this game to worry about?
That's a good-looking question.
Is there a good-looking answer?
Yeah, we'll see what I can do. Let's see what I can slap together. So they've moved Sheldon Richardson to the outside to play defensive end. That's how thin they are. They've promoted or signed at least 3 players from different practice squads who've gotten significant reps. Players like Deshaun Bauer, players like Kenny Willekes, players like Eddie Yarborough. DJ Wanham is getting a fairly heavy rotation, and I believe it'll be Wanham who's going to be probably the other starter opposite Sheldon Richardson. Kenny Willekes is, I don't know how to put it, over COVID, I guess. He doesn't seem to be suffering any long-term symptoms anymore. Because even after he tested negative and was cleared by the team, he seemed to have not been fit enough to play, right? And so, but now he seems to be. And so Willekes might start over Wanham, and he's pretty decent. A player like him seems kind of undersized, and so it's kind of surprising that he's a bull rusher. But it turns out without Griffin and Hunter,
wasn't Kenny the Michigan State kid or no?
Yeah, he's a Michigan State kid. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I thought that was who it was.
One of those kids that like he seems athletic sometimes, he doesn't at other times. You wonder how he's going to test. He tested poorly, and then he got mad about people calling him unathletic, so he put together a frankly impressive.
Right, I remember doing tape on him now. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. But he's a bull rusher. It's so interesting because his body type doesn't look like he's a bull rusher, but every edge rusher for the Vikings is a bull rusher now. Because you don't have Hunter or Griffin. So Wanham is a bull rusher with a bad spin move. Sheldon Richardson's a bull rusher because he's 300 pounds. Willekes is a bull rusher because he understands leverage. It's very weird. But that's what they have at edge rusher. And then up the middle, they're getting back, or they have back both Dalvin Tomlinson and Michael Pierce, both really good run stuffers, not really good pass rushers. Sometimes they'll sub in Armon Watts at nose tackle, and he's a great pass rushing nose tackle, but he gets washed away in the run game. And then sometimes you'll see a couple of these other defensive tackles that Blake Lynch is also a nose tackle. It's mostly nose tackles. Dalvin Tomlinson, nose tackle. Armon Watts, nose tackle. Michael Pierce, nose tackle. Some of them can rush the passer, but, nose tackle.
It's that box of cereal. Oops, all nose tackles. It's how the Vikings are building their roster. Just real quick on Wanham. Is he powerful? Him coming out of South Carolina, he was like this really tall, lanky guy that – like kind of athletic, but I couldn't get a read on him. Has he been effective?
No.
Okay, short answer, long answer.
Yeah, no. He's got length. He's got some get off capability. If he could string together moves naturally, he would very much be a speed to power guy, right? Like in the way that Connor Barwin was with the Eagles, or Jason Cole is even a better example. A speed to power guy where he's got speed. And get off capability, and he'll convert it into power, and he'll use his length to take advantage of it. But he's not really stringing them together in a way that's fluid or natural to him. He's tried the cross chop that we've seen DeMarcus Lawrence do, that we've seen Danielle Hunter do. I think T.J. Watt has the cross chop too. And if you do it wrong, it's really bad because you're off your feet, right? The only pass rushing moves where you leave your feet, right? It's the exact opposite of what they teach you in grappling-based martial arts, right? Never leave your feet. This works because it generates additional power, but your timing has to be good, and his isn't, right? And so he'll end up on the ground when he tries it. And so what's been working for him, which it doesn't work very often, but what's been working for him is a straight bull rush, because he has that length, and that helps him a little bit. But he's not very good at it, and then he'll try to build a speed rush so he can spin off of it. But all he has is the spin, so a lot of tackles are really just paying attention to the counter. It's a fairly awkward-looking spin. Vikings edge rushers have been really great at generating spin moves in the past. Andre Patterson's really good at teaching it, and so I can see why he really desperately wants to add it to his arsenal. But right now, it's not working for him.
Gotcha. 2 more questions for you, Arif. We'll get you out of here. Is this a Jordan Berry revenge game? How's he punted this year? The numbers look pretty good, but what's your evaluation of Jordan Berry?
Yeah, Jordan Berry's there because he's a holder. He's a really great holder. Mm-hmm. As a punter, I mean, I'm probably not going to say anything that's a surprise to you. He's really inconsistent.
Yeah,
but
no surprise there. Literally zero surprise.
His good punts are crazy good. Holy crap. Yeah. And so some of the games that he's had have been remarkable, right? Like he had like a 70-yard punt and a 60-yard punt, and it's just like nuts. His hang time's not great, but the Vikings have historically fielded some really excellent gunners. They probably have the fastest gunner in the league right now in Dan Chisena, because he was just an all NCAA track athlete who played football for like half a year for James Franklin. And the Vikings were like, yeah, I mean, fine. You come over here. You'll be a punt gunner. They actually, it's a funny story. So he's played receiver for Penn State, caught like 3 passes for them. So he signed as a receiver for the Vikings, was bad at it because he's a track player, not a football player. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, well, yeah, this isn't working, but we want to find a way to get you on the roster. We only have 3 safeties. We'll switch you to safety. And they tried that for 3 days, and they switched him back to receiver.
So it did not go well at safety,
yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, evidently not. He has taken snaps at receiver this year, which I find hilarious. But no targets or receptions or anything like that. But he's an incredible gunner, like just mind-bogglingly good. So the hang time thing kind of doesn't matter for Jordan Berry. Mm-hmm. But he's had like a 29-yard punt this year, and it wasn't because of the wind or anything. He's had some pretty bad punts. This year they've been fewer and far between, but I did watch some of the Steelers punts that he had just to get some context for him. And it was a little bit more frequent for the Steelers than it was for the Vikings. That to me is a variance thing. I imagine it might come back. So, who knows? But man, his good punts are incredible. Holy crap.
Yeah. Last question for you, Arif. Big game for both teams here, Minnesota and Pittsburgh. What's your prediction in this one?
When I had you on the pod, I asked if the Steelers were a good team. You said yes. I disagree. I don't think the Steelers are a good team. Okay. Mostly a Roethlisberger thing, and then also a depth thing on defense. The stars are good. The non-stars are not, to me. And the Vikings are weird, crazy, and inconsistent. I think they're still favored by 3 points. I don't know if the line has moved since they came out. But I would take the Vikings. Probably by 2 points. I'm sure there's going to be a missed kick here or there that's going to make things weird and wonky. I would say the Vikings by 2. If the Vikings lose by 7, it wouldn't surprise me. The only thing that would surprise me is a multi-score game. That's the only thing. The Vikings have played 12 games. 11 of them have been within 1 score.
Yeah, it's Pittsburgh does not blow out teams or win. It's always close. It's always competitive. So I expect this game to be in line with that. Arif, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, and good luck to the Vikings on Thursday.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our special thanks to Arif Hasan, again, writer for The Athletic, covers the Vikings. You go and check out his podcast, the Norse Code Podcast. I was on there earlier this week, and be sure to follow him on Twitter at Arif Hasan NFL. Let him know you heard him on the Terrible Podcast. We always appreciate that when you guys do that, Dave. Good interview there with Arif.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone I think both of us have followed on Twitter for quite a while. He's very active in draft Twitter annually as well, too. So definitely a good guest to have. And I think we're going to try to have him break some bread with him, if you will, when he comes out to Vegas. I think he's going to be out here for the East-West Shrine game. Easy for me to say. Along with representing Steelers Depot out here this year for that will be, I think, Josh Carney, Owen Straley, and Dr. Mel will be out here for the East-West Shrine game. So hopefully we can get all of us together, maybe get some lunch there. Make sure you reach out to Arif on Twitter and thank him for coming on the show. That means a lot to these guys for spending their time with us.
Absolutely. All right, Dave, let's preview ourselves the Steelers-Vikings game, and this week's been kind of weird. I'd watched the Vikings this weekend. I watched them 2 weeks ago to try to get a head start on our scouting report. I honestly have not done a lot of work since that because I've been so busy covering and recapping the Ravens game. I'm just going to watch more in Minnesota tonight. Our scouting reports from Josh, Tom, and myself will go up tomorrow. So maybe I'm a little less equipped than usual to try to speak, hopefully intelligently, about the Vikings, but we'll start here with their offense. And obviously they've been, a bit of an inconsistent group. They're able to score, I think, in bunches. They've had, 4 or 5 games this year at 30-plus points. And, we'll see if Dalvin Cook plays in this one. My guess is that he won't, but seems to be a chance for that one. They're kind of more conservative, traditional offense. They're going to run 2-back. They use a fullback in C.J. Ham. And so I think obviously one of the things you have to start here is stopping the run, regardless of whether it's Cook or Madison.
Absolutely. And if you're coming off of a short week to boot, no better offensive lineman. Gotta love to run the football right now. I don't know if you're gonna see him run as much as Bill Belichick. Boy, just when you think you've seen it all, right? I don't know how much of that game you watched the other night. I could not stop watching it. It was one of those, I can't believe this guy's going to do this, and he's going to win doing it. And I mean, plain and simple, he did. And you got to think, coming off of a short week, that each offense is going to want to try to run the football, right?
Yeah, you would think so. And again, the Vikings, they're a multiple tight end team. They've had some injuries there, and they don't have the old Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith, or even go back old school Jim Kleinsasser kind of guys. But they got a good underrated tight end in Ty Conklin, and they're a run heavy focused team overall. But when they do pass, of course, they have Justin Jefferson, and you made the point, and I think it's a really good one. Pittsburgh has done, I think, a better job than almost any defense to try to scheme away and take away a team's top threat, whether that's a Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Darren Waller, and especially with Adam Thielen, I assume not playing in this game. If you take away Jefferson and make third and fourth options try to beat you, I imagine that'll be Pittsburgh's strategy in this one.
I don't see how it's not, right? I mean, there's no way Thielen plays, right? I mean, even if he does on that high ankle, he's not going to be obviously his normal self. So this does kind of play. This is a key injury in this game. I think that makes the decision even easier for the Steelers to do, like you said, like they did with Waller, and we've seen that several times throughout this season here. That they make a concerted effort to kind of bracket a player. So apologies to those. Now look, Justin Jefferson, he's one of those guys that still can kind of hurt you at times. But as Arif said too, it seems like, and I haven't got deep into tape. I know you haven't either, but it seems like Cousins is a guy that not necessarily going to force it just because he wants to get it to his best player. If he does, then that might be a potential for a turnover or two to happen there. But I really expect them to go into this game and say, you know what? We're not going to let Justin Jefferson kill us. And if they do that, then the onus goes on the front, I think, to stop that running game, get mobiles. Here's the thing. You open up that tape against the Detroit Lions, what's the first thing that you see offensively from Cousins? They run the boot with him out. Now, you had to take off and scramble with it there, but I don't think they're afraid to kind of roll him out of the pocket. And I think we'll see that. I think you'll see a lot of heavy looks and them potentially try to use the tight ends in this game. And they've got a very, Ham's been around for a while, right? I mean, probably one of the more underrated big guys that you can move around on offense in the NFL that just doesn't get a lot of run there. But I think the Steelers' defensive game plan is don't let Justin Jefferson beat them in this one. Shut down the running game and try to get Cousins in some third and long situations and let TJ Watt do his thing.
Yeah, and can Alex Highsmith have a big game against backup left tackle there? As Arif said, Christian Darrisaw not playing in this one. So can you take advantage of that matchup, that opportunity? And I think Highsmith could have one of those, pockets of those 1.5 sack games he's been having so far this season.
Do you send pressure or do you not send pressure in this one? Or do you try to go at him with 4?
Yeah, I think less in this one. I think you're going to see more of what Pittsburgh's done prior to the Ravens game, where they're blitzing about a quarter of the time, as opposed to around 40% of the time. I think you probably scale things back here a bit and kind of play more of your traditional, at least for this season, structure.
I get a kick out, and I told Arif this too. I get a kick out of watching that Madison run. He's had some nice games in the NFL, has he not?
Yeah, I haven't followed his career too much. So he's done well filling in for Cook. I think didn't he have like one monster game last year or maybe years ago where it was like 200 yards, or was that is that accurate?
That's probably what's sticking in my head.
Let's see. Now we're in the portion of the show where I am clicking away here, seeing what Madison did. He had a 112-yard game against Seattle last year. I thought he had like some crazy game. I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking that. 113 is his best. That came earlier this year, but he's had a couple of good performances, and he's a good backup there for Dalvin Cook for sure.
Yeah, not much in the receiving category, I don't think. He can catch the football out of back. I get a kick out of the way he runs, because I kind of view his running style a little bit like as I told Arif there, kind of a poor man's Marshawn Lynch. He will run you over for sure. So this is a Vikings team that I think wants to get this thing to the fourth quarter with the lead. And boy, they've had the lead in every game this season, I think, by at least a time. What was the stat that Ringer had on them this morning? I think there's a good article about the Vikings if anybody's interested on the Ringer this morning here, and there's something along the lines that they have had, I think, a touchdown or more.
I think Arif said 6-point lead in every single game.
Okay,
sure. I assume that probably came from the Ringer. Is that the stat?
That might be. But anyway, this is probably a Vikings team that wants to get this thing to the fourth quarter and try to wear down the Steelers with their running game there. And even if Dalvin Cook plays, I don't know that he's going to be 100%. So there's going to be a nice mix if Cook does play of Cook and Madison, and I expect to see a lot of. I would think Ham's going to be in that on the field for 14, 15, 16 snaps, and maybe even more if they had the lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and while we're talking running backs, so he doesn't play a lot of true running back. Their rookie return guy, and the name I kind of butcher, so I apologize. I think it's Kene Wangu or something to that effect. Has 2 kick return touchdowns, and I think Arif had said when I talked to him earlier in the week that he's the PP, the personal protector on the punt team, and they'll run some fakes with him. So he's a game breaker, really explosive guy. So watch out for him in the kicking game. If you're boss, you try to probably get as many touchbacks as you can this Thursday.
Tyler Conklin, is a guy that where did he come over from? Wasn't it the Rams?
No, it's Higbee. I think he was drafted by them.
Okay.
He was one of the directional Michigan kids, I think, went to Western Michigan or one of those schools, I want to say.
Central Michigan.
Central Michigan.
Yeah,
I knew it was directional Michigan. I couldn't remember. I always get my compasses confused up there.
But they'll have him obviously on the field a bunch in this game, and they're not afraid to throw those tight end screens to him either.
Yeah, he's got done well this year. Replacing Irv Smith. I forget his exact stat line there, but he's been a good underneath threat for them, and especially if Adam Thielen's going to miss in this game, and if Jefferson's going to be taken away, then you're probably going to look at Conklin on a linebacker, on a Schobert, on a Devin Bush, and try to win those matchups. So I imagine there could be even like 8 to 10 catch game for Tyler Conklin if Pittsburgh's going to really try to take away Justin Jefferson.
And then I guess who's going to be their deep threat of outside of who's the other guy to watch outside of Jefferson with them?
They really haven't had. Haven't really had.
Westbrook, I guess, gonna dress and see some time.
I would imagine so. I mean, it's been so Jefferson and Thielen. It's been those guys. KJ Osborne probably their number 3. He's averaging 12 yards a catch here, 3 touchdowns. So I would probably say KJ Osborne is their next man up.
Yeah, just keep a lid on it.
Yep, for sure. Defensively for Minnesota, they're second in the NFL with 36 sacks, only one behind Pittsburgh, who shot up with their 7-sack performance against Baltimore. But they're missing Danielle Hunter with injury, and Everson Griffin had a mental health issue, so he's not going to play. Their top 2 sack guys will not play in this game, so I think that 36 sack stat is a little misleading, but they're still getting it from Kendricks, from Watts, from a variety of sources, and they're not a super blitz-heavy team, about average middle of the pack in terms of blitzing, but those Mike Zimmer teams will certainly be aggressive and give you some, mug the A gaps on third down, that kind of stuff. And so you have to be really sound from a protection standpoint, because they're going to really kind of stress you, similar as Baltimore did.
I would expect a lot of stunts in this one.
Yep. I would.
And I think you'll see some old Fire X kind of crossing stuff with their middle linebackers as well too. They are look, Zim knows Ben Roethlisberger, right? You know, all those years being defensive coordinator at the Bengals there. You know, I don't think he just wants Ben to stay back there and be comfortable. So I would expect, especially with them missing their top couple of pass rushers here, I expect Ben to have to see a lot of numbers in this game. So because of that, the Steelers got to be on their P's and Q's with some quicks and some hots and those kind of things, and got to be ready to handle guys like LeGlue, you know, guys that aren't used to passing stuff off and things along that nature. I think you're going to see a lot of that in this game from the defensive front of the Vikings.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, how successful will Pittsburgh be running the football? Because, well, the Vikings' run defense has been really poor this year. They have some talent up front with Tomlinson and Pierce are like two very classic run stuffer, interior type of guys. Pierce played with Baltimore and always had, you know, pretty good success against Pittsburgh. So while I know the numbers don't look good for Minnesota, and so Pittsburgh should be able to run the ball well. We've said that about, you know, the Chargers game and the Lions game and things like that. And so I just worry about when you have, you know, Green and I assume LeGlue in there trying to block Tomlinson and Pierce, will Pittsburgh struggle to run the ball efficiently? I think that is a real concern in this game.
You better be able to run. I don't want to hear it. You know, you better be able to run. Your onus was to run the football this year, and okay, yeah, you don't have all the pieces there. But I mean, I think LeGlue represented himself well in the fourth quarter of that game. You better run. It's December football. You better be able to run the football right now. And if they don't, then that's going to play. Look, that secondary, I think they're going to have Patrick Peterson back. I mean, they got some names over there. Obviously, some, you know, Peterson's a little bit longer in the tooth this time, of part of his career. Harrison Smith's up, you know, a name, but obviously his better years behind him. Brashad Breeland is more of a name, but that said, this is a group that I think if you put the football close to them, they can come away with it there. So I'm not. Once again, I don't want to see Ben Roethlisberger have to drop back and pass 40-something times in this game, because that's when something's likely to happen that you don't want to have happen, especially with a crafty guy like Patrick Peterson on the back end back there. So, man, I'm interested. And once again, your short week, I'm sure the offensive line says, boy, I don't want to have to worry about pass blocking 40 or 50 times in this game. So let's see if they can run.
Yeah, I think maybe try to push the ball in the perimeter a bit more with those ends being out, and, you know, trying to run that interior might be tougher to do. I know they'll play Richardson, you know, kind of more as an edge guy, you know, with some of the losses of Hunter and Griffin. But I think if you're going to try to run, maybe you get some of those toss plays they've run a bit with Najee this year and try to get the ball outside and make those, you know, make Tomlinson and Pierce run and flow as opposed to trying to run it straight up the gut.
Right.
Any other thoughts here on the Vikings defense? Harrison Smith still, you know, he's 32 years old, probably, you know, twilight-ish of his career, but still an impactful player and still a really good box safety and someone that's certainly going to be an impact guy in that run game.
Yeah, I think even him, though, I mean, he's not the fear. You know, you don't fear him like you used to. I'll tell you that. Now, Peterson is a guy that still can scare you because he's been around so long and crafty kind of player, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's talent. I mean, so I said about running the ball outside, but they got some athletic linebackers in Kendricks, and maybe Anthony Barr plays this week, and those guys are really athletic, sideline-to-sideline type linebackers. So I think how Pittsburgh tries to form its run scheme and what works best is going to be a defining part of their offense and probably by extension this game.
You know, I'd make their inside linebackers work. That's for sure. I mean, I would like to see some pistol in this to kind of keep those, you know, run more. We've seen Ben Roethlisberger under center a little bit too. That's been nice to see. This could be a game where you can feed Pat Freiermuth the ball 9 times.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Yeah, I think, you know, you get him involved, and I don't know if you do anything super mystical or magical in terms of your pass, you know, plan. I think it's kind of what's been working for you. Deonte's going to get a lot of volume and hopefully hit a couple of cover one shots to Claypool. But yeah, I think Freiermuth, you know, the more he can touch the football, usually the better things go.
Is 3 explosive plays going to be enough in this one, or do they need more?
I mean, it's always tough to say. It depends on how many turnovers you get. I mean, obviously, the more the better. The more you have, the higher chances of winning you have. It goes back to that talk stat. Is kind of what I try to focus on. If you win that, then you probably well. The Vikings are a weird team. They played, I think, 5 games this year where they've scored 30 or more points, and they're 2-3 in those games. So they're a tough team to figure out. They're kind of like Pittsburgh, where they're very up and down kind of team, and it's appropriate that probably the Lions have only beaten the Vikings and only tied the Steelers. And so that kind of sums up where both the Steelers and the Vikings are at.
Right. And look, I mean, this is a backs against the wall game. It's obviously interconference and all, but where they are at right now with just under 5, even winning this game won't get them back to 500. This is one of those got to have it games, because if they go to 5-8, and looking at the rest of their schedule there, that might be it for them. So it's obviously a big game for both these teams at this point, both outside the wild card window, but they're going to be in the pull out all the stops mode, and they're playing at home, short week. It does kind of favor them, I think, overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know we say, Tomlin likes to say it's an even playing field. Both teams have to deal with a short week, but Minnesota does not have a travel day in there, and so they have a slight advantage in that respect. But you're right; it's a huge game. It's a season must-win game for Minnesota, and for probably Mike Zimmer's career in Minnesota to continue to be the head coach, at least have a chance to continue to be their head coach. If he loses this one, then he probably will not come back after this year. So a lot on the line for him and for the team.
All
right, Dave. I think we should get to our picks here. And don't listen to me, because my picks are always wrong. So I think I trust your instincts more than I do my own here.
Don't flatter me. I make one correct pick out of a gut win one for the Gipper speech, and no, I'm not all of a sudden some genius here.
Well, the correct pick from the gut is better than the wrong pick from the brain. So I'm going to let you start things off here, though, Dave. And what's your pick and what's your prediction in this one?
I'm going to piss a lot of people off this week, I think.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, look, I mean, big game. They got it against the Ravens. This is a tough week, I think, for the Steelers. You come off of a very emotional game like that against the Ravens there, and now you have a short week to go on the road here, and you're playing a team that's coming off an embarrassing loss to the Lions. They have a very a capable quarterback in Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is never going to probably be anybody's slam dunk top 8, 9, 10 quarterback in the league. But when you turn around, you're always asking, well, where should I have Kirk Cousins? He's that kind of player there. He's very, very capable. I think Jefferson's a great up-and-coming young wide receiver. I think even with their running game, even if they have to lean on Madison and him, I think they're in good shape here. I worry about the Steelers on a short week. I worry about being on the screws. I worry about penalties. I worry about Ben Roethlisberger maybe having to throw down the field one too many times. So, I'm going to make some people mad here, but I think the Steelers actually go on the road and lose this one, and I have this one 23-20 Vikings.
Wow, I'm surprised by that. I respect it. I appreciate the candor there, and certainly, Pittsburgh's going to have their hands full. But I'm going the other way, Dave. So we're in different directions here for the second
one of us
straight
will
week.
be correct.
One of us,
maybe,
or tie. Yeah, not so fast, my friend. We could both be wrong here. I just look at Minnesota and say, I imagine Pittsburgh's going to take away Jefferson. He's going to be kind of, for the most part, obviously he'll have an impact in this game, but the way Pittsburgh's done it against Devontae Adams and Diggs and the guys I mentioned, he won't be a big threat in this game. I think the run defense has improved. The addition of Montrevious Adams is, of course, huge. I think that's going to be big going forward. I think offensively, I am worried about Pittsburgh's run game overall, but I just think defensively Pittsburgh matches up well in terms of what they do schematically and philosophically. And so I have Pittsburgh winning this one 21-17.
Yeah, I worry about some kind of, turnover or special teams return for something along those lines is what got me so fearful. And look, this even in the games that this team has won this year, they just normally don't score a lot of points, and that concerns me against a team like the Vikings that's just itching to get this thing into the fourth quarter, and maybe they're obviously coming off a short week as well too. But I think they feel if they can get this thing to the fourth quarter, they can bludgeon the Steelers with that running game and maybe salt this one away with a late field goal or whatever. But I wouldn't bet my house on either way with what I went here. But that's the way I see this one setting up. And once again, I don't think you obviously want the Steelers to run the table here. But if there was one game that you could say, okay, it's okay to maybe to lose this one, I think this one is it. And I do worry about them on the short week.
Yeah, I get that for sure. I would not be shocked if like I said, they're pretty similar teams. Minnesota and Pittsburgh have been frustratingly difficult to get a read on in terms of just what kind of team do they have. And I said, Pittsburgh's a good team. I think they're a competitive team. They're in every single game, generally speaking, Bengals game aside, obviously, but they're competitive enough, and these games are always close, and they go down to the wire about who's making that last play, and that's kind of what makes them tough to figure out because it is so just down to the wire. And it sounds like Minnesota's in a similar boat there. So we'll see what happens. We'll hope I'm right, but who knows?
Here's the thing: if you get the win here and you get it on a short week, this would be a pretty big win for this team, I think, because it would show that they can, after the blowout to the Bengals, they turn around. Everybody's questioning in their manhood. Former Steelers all after them. You got the number one team in the AFC in the Ravens. Coming to Pittsburgh. Blah blah blah. You took care of business there. You turn around on this short week and take care of which I still consider a pretty decent Vikings team here. And then you get that long week in there to start preparing for who is it? The Titans after this? Is that right?
Yep. Right.
And I mean, 7-5-1. I don't know. You're in a position there, and who knows how things go. Is 2 more wins enough to get you into playoffs? You would think at least 3 would be at this point. So sure. This is kind of one of these games that I don't, you don't know if you're going to look back at and say, oh, man, if only we would have took care of business on the road against the Vikings, there'd be in the playoffs and all. So, I think the Steelers can win this game. I just predict that they won't.
Fair enough. We both have a close. You have a 3-point loss. I have a 4-point win. So, that tells you it's going to be a close game. And, again, it comes down to who makes that final play, which is exactly what happened against the Ravens.
All right,
Dave, let's get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
Yeah, let's get to the email machine there. Did you say something pop up there?
Yeah, just about Zach Cunningham, David Culley basically saying it's not production related, it's off the field, and that goes back to some of those concerns that make me think Pittsburgh's probably not going to be terribly interested. But we'll see.
All right, interesting. All right, let's see if I can pick up where we left off here the other day. We'll start this one from Bryce writes in another classic ending. Wait, when did this one go in? 3 hours ago. That go-ahead scoring drive was the best drive of the season for Matt Canada and the entire offense. Kudos to the players for stepping up. When you look at a player like LeGlue, what do you see in his skill set that's allowed him to be effective? Sounds like Bryce trying to put LeGlue in the Pro Bowl here. Number 2, not sure what you guys think about this, but even though it worked out for them to tie the game based on how the game was going, did you have a problem with Harbaugh not calling his first timeout around 2:20-ish mark to give his defense a chance to get a stop and hold us to a possible field goal? I thought he should have used a timeout in that situation. I got to be honest with you, I haven't even looked at the time management aspect of Jim Harbaugh later in that game because of the quick turnaround and all like that. I'd tell you more than anything about the Harbaugh decision. I was surprised at the end of the game that he went for 2. And I understand his excuse for being down corners and all that kind of stuff there. I was a bit surprised he ended up trying to go for the win there. I'm all about analytics and all like that, but that still remains the surprising part to me about that. I haven't looked at his time management, about 220-ish mark, so I can't comment on that. About LeGlue, I mean, we still don't have a large complement of snaps to go on him. More than anything, he just looked competent about what his assignments were. I thought that early in that game, once again, he had a reach of the defensive tackle that I thought was very, very impressive. Turned him back inside. That was that was the key block, I thought, on that one particular running play there. And then in the fourth quarter, I thought him and Dan Moore really worked well together. And I just think overall in pass protection, the entire offensive line, I thought did a good job in pass protection. Your thoughts on LeGlue, what stuck out to him, and the Harbaugh clock management thing?
Yeah, on the Harbaugh stuff, I have no idea. Even if it was not a short week, I would have paid zero attention to that stuff just because there's so much other things on my plate. So I'll let Ravens fans talk about Harbaugh's clock management and all that kind of stuff. With LeGlue, I think it's just about being prepared. And so when you go back in training camp and you're repping at every single spot and you're learning the whole offense, because when you're learning, you know what everyone's doing because you've played all those kind of spots. So you played left guard, you played center, you played right guard, you played right tackle, and that probably just prepares you to be thrown into anywhere with limited practice reps and short notice and things like that. So as you said, he just was ready and he was assignment sound. And whenever you're prepared and you're versatile and you just have a good understanding of the playbook and what this offense looks like and functions, that probably makes you more ready than a guy who just kind of plays at one spot and gets thrown into the fire.
Okay, let's move forward here with the email machine and go to Ricky J. Virgil writes in, Dave, amazing theory. Hi, Dave and Alex. Rick here from Albuquerque. Love the podcast. The great work does not go unrecognized. I have turned all my Steeler buddies over to you guys for all their Steelers news. 2 comments rather than questions. I know you guys don't throw shade on other reporters, but Ed Bouchette, or as I call, he says Ed Bull, S-H-I-T. You can't say that on the podcast, I don't think so. As I call him, being called the Steelers insider and a Hall of Fame voter blows my mind. The guy is clueless. Catch myself saying when I hear him on air that he needs to listen to you and Alex to be much more informed. Second, Dave, your theory is truly genius. I've been called genius in like twice in 1 week by our listeners. What's happening here?
And the Nobel Prize goes to, it's Dave Bryan.
I don't know what the heck's going on here. He says, your theory is truly genius. A couple of podcasts ago when you spoke about Bush maybe not loving football, maybe doing it for his father, made me think so. He says, I had to go through all the games this year on all 22. And Dave, I think you're right. There's no passion, just going through the motions. For example, he says, look at the last play of the game versus the Ravens when Andrews drops the ball. Everyone going crazy. Bush looks disinterested, no celebration or passion. Always keep up the good work. And Dave, make that trip to Albuquerque. We have casinos too. Me and my wife were in Albuquerque not too terribly long ago, Ricky, absolutely. And we made Santa Fe. We were really enjoyed the going up to Santa Fe there. And obviously spent, we did that whole skyline tram thing in Albuquerque. Very, very great scenery up there. So we will be back at some point in the Albuquerque, Santa Fe area. Beautiful God's country there for sure. All right, his thoughts about Ed Bouchette and his thoughts about Devin Bush, Alex.
Well, I mean, Bouchette's been around for such a long time. I grew up reading Bouchette. I mean, just kind of a titan of it all. But it certainly feels like he doesn't, and again, I don't read his stuff too often or really at all, but it seems like he's, doesn't love his job right now and kind of seems to hold a lot of Steeler fans in contempt, which seems to be a common theme sometimes with some of the media types, and not just in Pittsburgh, but in a lot of different, cities and venues. But I'm not going to comment a whole lot on that. People can like who they like and read who they read and all that kind of stuff. What was the second part of that question?
He's not a big fan of what Alex and I do. We will add that.
Yeah, that's been made, I think, perfectly clear. Yeah, with Devin Bush, yeah, I get what you're saying about the celebration. Maybe the guy was just exhausted. I mean, guys celebrate in different ways. It's just such a clear line for me to question a guy's effort and passion. Kim Haywood actually kind of made comments about that today, that he really didn't appreciate the commentary from the alumni about questioning effort and heart. He said it was right to criticize their play and performance, but their heart and their effort is kind of a line for me. And so I do it occasionally, but it is pretty rare. So I don't know, and I don't like to go to that place without really kind of concrete information and confidence that's the problem.
Here's the thing, Rick, with kind of my theory there. It's a theory, all right? I have nothing to say that, it just, the way it has looked at times from an effort standpoint, with Bush, and knowing his background and knowing what he did at Michigan and all like that, there have been times where I have wondered myself, is this guy playing football? I mean, look what happened to this guy. And I don't know what happened. Maybe you go stir crazy trying to recover like he did from the knee surgery and all like that. I mean, he kind of flipped on social. He went out of character bad this past offseason, right, Alex? I mean,
sure, there were some extremely questionable and downright disturbing tweets.
Is that a cry out for help? I don't know. I
don't think either of us are equipped to answer that.
But all I can say is the thought has crossed my mind because of who his dad is, former NFL. You kind of wonder somehow if maybe people aren't doing the things in life that they want to do. I know throughout my life I've done a lot of things that I thought I liked doing, but deep down inside I didn't have passion for. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't have a passion to do something, you're probably not going to be great at it. You could be good at it, but are you great at it? And I have found myself wondering that about Bush. Look, nobody wants this kid to succeed more than I do, as I've said several times. To have a team like the Steelers who invest so heavily in a draft, especially with their first-round draft picks, to miss on a first-round draft pick for the Steelers and not get those kids signed to a second contract and end up being, maybe not Hall of Famers, but be impactful players over a, 8, 9, 10 year portion of their career is huge when it comes to the Steelers. So I'm rooting for this kid, absolutely, but I got to see more than what. Now, he did have a better game for whatever it's worth against the Ravens, but that's still not going to get his option picked up, right?
Right. Yeah, the bar, that game was not good enough where it needs to be going forward, though it was better. I think your theory makes sense, and it sounds good, and it may be true. I mean, no one knows. But I will say this, and I've said this from the get-go, is this guy worked his tail off this offseason to recover from that ACL tear, and that's a lot of long nights and early mornings and consistent work behind closed doors, dealing with injury in a pandemic, no less. And I have to think you have to love the game to some degree to work that hard to get back out there and be ready for basically day one of training camp. There has to be some passion there and some hunger to get back on the field that wouldn't exist if you didn't really care about the game.
Right, I'm 100% on board with that. And once again, what I have said in the past about him is just one theory that I have about him. So, look, just hoping he's got 5 games now left. One coming obviously on a short week on Thursday night can really, really make an impact in this game, especially against a team like the Vikings that are going. Hold off with the genius just yet. Maybe after the season. But
I mean, you said it's a theory, but so is a theory of relativity, and I think you are the Einstein of the Steelers coverage guys.
Nah, stop.
I'm just saying.
You can give yourself a raise at any time. All right.
That's what I'm angling for. I'm saying nice things to you, so when I get that raise, you're not gonna say no.
Yeah, Christmas is coming and the goose is getting fat, right?
Exactly. Something like that. Sounds like a Southern saying that I don't fully understand, but I'll take it.
Let's see here. Let's jump ahead here to Philip Garrow writes in, hey guys, you may have heard this or talked about it by the time you read this email, but on DVE today, Tuesday, Gene Steratore addressed the Ravens' intentional offsides play. He says, The Steelers could have decided to decline it, blah, blah, blah. It's declinable, if that's a word, and that if the Ravens had continued to jump off sides play after play, the referees could flag them for palpable unfair act. In any event, my take on it is that the Steelers made the right call in accepting the first down because there's no guarantee they convert to 3rd and 2. There's especially with that offense this year and risking to having to settle for the field goal. Just want to pass that along and say you guys are hope you guys are doing well. And if I don't get an email out before, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Phil in Phoenix, listener, site follower since 2011. Philip, thanks for checking in. Thanks for, I did not hear that from Gene Steratore, but that helps clear up a couple things that Alex and I have been talking about.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. I didn't hear that, so that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's a case to be made that you just accept the penalty because if you decline it, then it's 2nd and 2, and as Phil said, there's no guarantee you convert there, and obviously it all worked out in the end. So good information there. Appreciate that.
Absolutely, for sure. Let me see if I can pull up some. Let's see here. Lost my place. Let's see here. Move forward with. I want to bounce back. Brian writes in, mailbag, Dave and Alex, 2 hypothetical questions to escape reality. Who would be more beneficial to this team? Marquise Pouncey in his prime or Casey Hampton in his prime? Number 2, you are in charge. If a team offered a first-round pick in the 2022 draft, let's just say 15th overall for Mike Tomlin, would you pull the trigger? Thanks for humoring me, Brian. All right, answer Brian's hypothetical questions there, Alex.
Would I trade Tomlin for the 15th overall pick? Is that what he's asking?
That's the way I take it.
Yeah. No, I would not do that. Have to be higher than that. And then in terms of Pouncey or Hampton, that's a good question. No wrong answers there. I mean, Pouncey's going to play more. Hampton, I think, is that integral part of the run D. I mean, I'll lean Pouncey just because he's going to log 1,000 snaps compared to Hampton's 350, 400-ish snaps.
These are quite easy for me to answer, quite honestly. Number 1, I would like Marquise Pouncey in this current team right now, and that's no disrespect whatsoever to Casey Hampton. I just think that this team could use the current state, Martravius Adams obviously with this team, and Adam when Hampton played, he was obviously a much used much more like an old school 2-gapper. I think the Steelers want more penetrating guys right now. So once again, this is in no way, shape, or form disrespect to Casey Hampton. I just think in the team's current form, I would rather have Marquise Pouncey in his prime right now in the middle instead of Kendrick Green. I think they'd be a lot better off. And no, I would not trade Mike Tomlin for a first-round draft pick in the 2022 draft pick, 15th overall. There's just no way I would do that.
Yep, there you go. So, good question.
Vince Natali writes in, hey, Dave, tried to DM you. Look, people, if you try to DM, you just don't know how crazy our DMs are. We all kind of communicate on DMs, so my DMs move fast, and sometimes I get a lot of spam in my DMs as well, too. So if I don't answer you in DMs, I'm sorry. Just sometimes I miss them. He says, figured I'd try this way. Very curious to hear your thoughts. Why does 21 personnel not seem to be an option teams run anymore? Without knowing why it is, it seems to me kind of like the best of both worlds. Why doesn't anyone run 21 personnel? Plain and simple is what he wants to know. Look, I mean, I think a lot of people just 21 personnel, you got to have the right guy in there at fullback, obviously there. And you're a lot less likely to hit an explosive play, I think, out of 21 personnel and having, you want to spread the field more, I think. You don't, with all these athletes nowadays, teams don't want all those athletes maybe more so in the middle of the field as opposed to spread out. I mean, I do think there is a place for 21 personnel throughout games. I think we're going to see the Minnesota Vikings use quite a bit of 21 personnel against the Steelers on Thursday night. I just don't think it's something that you're going to run a lot, more than 50% of your offense through on any given week.
Sure, it's a passing league. Points are a premium. They score more now than ever before. And so usually you want receivers. You want guys that can create the big plays, that spread the field, that are a little more versatile, as Dave mentioned. And then also it's a part of the college game. I mean, every college system spread and, 4 receivers and tight ends that look like and act like receivers. And there aren't a lot of fullbacks. There aren't a lot of the I-form college teams anymore. It's very, very few. And so if there aren't a lot of those guys in the college system, they don't trickle up to the NFL. And so that's, I think, a big reason for that. A lot of the NFL's kind of, shape and form and function is determined by the college game and how it looks. And whenever it's spread, the NFL kind of becomes spread as well.
Look, Vince, you got to twist my arm, to watch some of this stuff, and I'm excited to see how the Vikings use it against the Steelers this week because I'm old school. I like to strap it up. I like the fullback on the field. I like 22 personnel.
Yeah.
I like.
But it's hard to find that fullback. Half the fullbacks in the NFL are defensive linemen in college.
I like 12 personnel when it's used the way the Patriots used to use it years ago, and really sometimes still do try to use it at sometimes. I love that kind of stuff. I think that's, and it's been kind of an angle I've seen one of the media guys try to take this week in some of these media sessions here. How much does game plan specific kind of exploiting certain matchups in games matter in today's NFL, Alex? I mean, when you boil it down with so many athletes and all like that and so many great players, how much can an offensive or defensive coordinator actually make a difference from one week to another? Period. Obviously execution, and Canada was, in so many words, said this yesterday, and I think Butler to some degree. If you don't execute, it doesn't matter in today's NFL because the talent is so evenly distributed. But I mean, look, we have praised guys like Sean McVay and Sean Payton, who are some of the most brilliant offensive and defensive minds right now in the NFL, and how much do those guys actually make a difference from week to week? Because we've seen McVay even kind of go backwards here recently, I think.
Sure. I mean, some of the top names, Cliff Kingsbury offensively, McVay, Shanahan defensively, guys like, Bill Belichick. I think Wink Martindale in Baltimore does a good job overall. I think it makes a difference because, as you said, that talent gap is so small. And so every team's talented. Everyone has guys. And obviously some teams are better than others. But, I mean, everyone's like the top 0.1% of NFL or football talent when it comes to the NFL. And so I think a lot of things get defined by your coaching staff and your game plan. What's going to give you the edge in that one? What small wrinkle or exploit or tendency can you figure out to give you that winning edge? And I think you look at Miami, for example, the way they blitzed Lamar and ran a bunch of covers a year, and the way teams are copying that. And so I think, Miami came in that game, didn't have the talent, didn't have the better personnel, but the better game plan. So, I mean, as you said, execution is ultimately what it comes down to. That's how these games are decided. But I think the game plan and trying to find those one or two mismatches and those big moments can easily define games.
What do you think about what Bill Belichick did the other night? Mike Tomlin would never do that, would he?
I mean, what would any coach do that?
Would any coach do that?
Three times, run 46 times in those conditions. Just have the commitment to it. Running on 3rd and 18, knowing you're not going to score here, but you're playing the longer game because of it. So, I mean, that's who Belichick is. I mean, he didn't overthink it. The weather was bad. They ran the ball well, so they're going to keep running the football, play good defense, and win that game. And that was the bottom line. He didn't get too cute about it. He just went old school and whatever it takes to win. He truly embodies what it means when we say whatever it takes to win, literally running the ball every single play, and it got you the victory.
Charles writes in, guys, I'm going to use a baseball term, wins above replacement when judging players' results. After watching LeGlue and Adams performing on Sunday, it makes me wonder if the past left guards and nose tackles were all performing as negative WAR, and we just needed an average replacement to see better results. Where I'm going with this is I really wonder if there isn't a better off-ball linebacker on someone else's practice squad who would play better than Bush or Schobert. Both of them seem to be playing in negative WAR fashion. Sorry for the baseball statistical reference on a football podcast. Look, Charles, I get it. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, I get the question there, and obviously Adams was a good find, and credit to the Steelers pro scouts for doing that. It's Brandon Hunt and company for identifying that talent and having those guys ready to come in and contribute. So, I mean, you never know until you play those guys, and so you found some guys that could help you, and I think it was the right move for Pittsburgh to go out of house to try to find a nose tackle because they were not going to find that guy internally.
All I caution about right now is that's one game. All right?
That's a good point.
Let's see what happens with LeGlue and Adams on a short week here. Now, as far as the off-the-ball linebacker, it is kind of difficult to get these guys to come off. I mean, you talk about really the quarterback position of your defense there. I mean, we saw last year mid-season them go out and get who was it?
Who's this?
The Steelers last year, middle of the season, the linebacker.
Avery Williamson.
Oh, yeah, Avery Williamson. And it took him a little, you just can't throw anybody in there. You know what I'm saying? Especially at the inside linebacker position, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. As you said, it's probably easier to get that nose tackle up to speed than it is an inside linebacker or another position. But, Adams played well. I
would think at the nose tackle and left guard positions, if there were two positions that it would be easier, I would think maybe those are the two positions. But look, let's watch and see what happens here. And obviously we're going to have a lot of eyes on Adams this week, and it certainly looks like LeGlue is going to be the guy to ask to play at left guard again here. So we'll have more tape on both those guys to judge. Brandon writes in, Alex, you're onto something. Maybe we can sign JT to a 5-year, $85 million extension. TJ Watt worth every single dang penny. I think you made a joke about cloning him.
Paying him twice or something.
Paying him twice or something along those lines. And Brandon wanted to highlight what you had to say there. And I think I've got us through all of them here, Alex Kozora. One more. Brandon, Zach Cunningham. But the Steelers struggling with run defense. Do you guys think it's feasible? Look, just so happens Brandon sent this in after we were talking about it. Brandon, I think the biggest issue here is kind of the things Alex has pointed out here. I don't think it's the money aspect here. Look, if he passes the smell test, I mean, if you brought him in, you're gonna bring him in not to play just special teams, I would think, right? You're bringing him in because you want him to play meaningful snaps. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the Steelers did do something like that, it's a huge indictment on Devin Bush. But once again, they pulled the plug on Artie Burns 2.5 seasons into it, right? I'm not saying they should. I just think that this is a guy they've had past somewhat level of interest, I think, in pre-draft process there. His salary is not too hard to take on. If the tape is better than the off the field stuff that Alex has already kind of looked into, I mean, I guess you could see something happening there, but the off field, according to what Alex says, seems to be a concern here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Cunningham wouldn't play for Thursday's game, and you have 10 days off, and hopefully Spillane can get right by then. So if you're going to do anything, just play Spillane. You have a competent run defender that you could replace Bush with, at least in base packages. So I don't even see necessarily the need to go out of house when you have an in-house option like Spillane to turn to, unless a knee injury is going to be a multi-week kind of thing. Then that may change the equation a little bit, but provided that's not the case, then just play Spillane more.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too, because if he's on waivers today, he'd have to be claimed by tomorrow, right?
Yeah, he's not playing. Like, even if he was claimed, like, he's not going to be ready, and up to speed and all that to play over Devin Bush.
Right, and unless you got some sort of roster exemption, which I don't think you would, then you'd have to accommodate him on the roster. So you would probably have to send a guy like maybe Spillane to IR for at least 3 weeks. And yeah, I mean, if you had an injury to a starter right now, maybe, but I think the plausibility of it happening is very, very low. I'll put it to you that way.
1% chance of it happening. And again, if you want to take Devin Bush out, that's fine, but just place Spillane. And that, I mean, he was going to be your starter until about 2 weeks before the season began. And so, I mean, think they like him enough to play him if they really wanted to make a change.
All right, good show, Alex. You and I will be back on Thursday on Quick Sleep to wrap this all up, and hopefully we'll talk about the Steelers being 7-5-1. That will be a nice conversation to have if indeed we're able to have it. If not, we'll be talking potentially about a 6-1 team, right?
Yep, those are the two most likely possibilities. So hopefully it's the former.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on the Twitter machine at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, want to do, look, make sure you get on there and follow Arif and thank him for being on the show as well too. And go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you want an ad-free version, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.